A meeting takes place at the French headquarters currently located in Africa. The French commander warns his team that he has received some important information. The enemy chief named Massillon has arrived at Sector Y for a visit. This means that the French squadron will be able to assassinate the man tonight. For this mission, the chief has recruited 5 squadrons, totaling 49 soldiers. He makes it clear that the soldiers will not have air support. One of the fighters asks how many enemies they will face. The chief replies that between 350 to 500 men. A soldier named Daru tries to understand if his friend agrees with this. Kang Shan tells him to be silent. The soldiers are aware that it is impossible to win with the number of numbers they have. The commander explains that the fighters only need to assassinate Massillon, so the squad must cease fire and retreat immediately when that happens. Daru says something to Chan again, and the commander gets angry. The 2 soldiers are silent. That guy named Kang Chan is our main character. He keeps his gaze steady at the French commander. On an ordinary day, this would make the captain angry, but he decides to move on because today is a very special day. After these words, the meeting comes to an end. A few hours later, night comes, and it's time for the French squadron to complete the mission. The protagonist, Kang Chan, is in the lead. The car carrying the soldiers arrives at the destination. Chan gives 5 minutes for the men to get ready and check their weapons. Meanwhile, he takes the opportunity to smoke a cigarette. A blonde soldier approaches and calls Chan captain. The protagonist faces the soldier making a strange movement with his hand. Apparently, the man wanted to celebrate after the end of the mission. Daru joins the conversation and tells Smithin to stop it. Chan also scolds the soldier for thinking nonsense when he should worry about surviving. Smithin calmly says that he has nothing to worry about because he has the god of Blackfield with him. The protagonist laughs and says not to overdo it. 5 minutes later, the squad enters the forest. Walking calmly towards the soldiers in Massillon's camp, they walk slowly without causing any noise. Chan goes ahead and checks if there are any enemies hiding behind the bushes or trees. There are about 2 km to go to the actual destination, and everything seems to be going well for now. But for some reason, the protagonist has a bad feeling. Smithin tries to know if the leader is okay. Chan says it's just a bad feeling. Smithin mockingly asks if the god of Blackfield is afraid. He even jokes that it's time for Chan to retire. At that moment, the whole squad hears a gunshot. Smithin fell backwards after a bullet pierced his armor. Suddenly, a hail of bullets is fired at Chan's squad. The soldiers try to hide behind the trees. In addition to the gunfire, the protagonist's squad also receives grenades. Chan carried Smithin to a tree while the attack continued. He realizes with concern that the enemy are using grenade launchers. It is clear that his squad is not being attacked by some sentinels. Professional snipers were waiting for them. The protagonist checks if Daru is okay. Fortunately, the shots did not hit him. At that moment, the enemy soldiers arrive with support and join against the French squad. Chan tries to shoot too. His aim is so good that several soldiers are shot down. The enemy's car starts to catch fire after the last shot. Chan turns his attention to Smithin and asks if he needs morphine. The soldier replies that he doesn't and tries to understand if he suffered a major injury. The protagonist lies, saying that he is not bad. In fact, Smithin had his organs damaged. Daru asks what the protagonist intends to do. Chan wants to retreat immediately to save Smithin, but Smithin says that the captain must do it, so he tells Chan to move on. The man begins to lose consciousness. The protagonist screams, asking if Smithin knows who he is. Smithin replies in a low tone of voice that the captain is the god of Blackfield. Suddenly, a grenade explodes near them. Chan worries and Daru says he wasn't hurt much. The protagonist then asks the man to hold out a little longer. He promises to finish off the enemies. Chan comes out of hiding and shoots the target, but at that moment a bullet is fired from behind. The protagonist falls to the ground and his vision quickly darkens. He wonders if he was shot in the back. Clearly some traitor gave his location. Chan complains that his head is hurting, but he remembers that he should have passed away and asks why he still feels pain. Suddenly, the protagonist screams that he is thirsty, and some voices ask him to react if he can hear. His eyes slowly open, and a doctor asks him how he feels. Without hearing answers, the doctor asks Nurse Kim to check the vital signs. The protagonist takes a while to understand the place and the language they are speaking to him. The doctor shouts that the patient Kang Chan has woken up. Meanwhile, the Special Forces captain has difficulty understanding what is happening, but he realizes that the doctor in front of him is Asian. Chan didn't used to see Asian because he worked in a French squad. He asks where he is. The doctor replies that this is the Se Bayo Hospital in Gangnam. Nurse Kim is ordered to call the patient's companion. Chan tries to understand how he ended up in Korea. The doctor says that he ended up there after they called 119. The protagonist is surprised because there is no such emergency number in Africa. The doctor comes to the conclusion that the patient is confused because he has been unconscious for 3 days. Chan jumps out of bed when he hears that he has been unconscious for 3 days. He runs wondering how he looks, but the protagonist does not recognize the person reflected in the mirror. A few days later, a car travels along the central road of Gangnam. The protagonist was discharged and released to return home. In the time he was hospitalized, he received some information. Before he was Kang Chan, a 29-year-old team instructor and captain of the French mercenary forces, but lost consciousness after being shot during a mission in the African battle. Then he regained consciousness in 2019 in South Korea. Now he is in the body of a boy also named 19-year-old Kang Chan. The original owner of the body jumped from the roof of the school, where he studied, and was unconscious for 3 days. People think the teenager woke up, but in fact the protagonist who took over the body. He believes that the boy passed away in the fall. The woman sitting next to Chan is the mother of the original body owner. Her name is Hai Suk. She received the information that her son forgot what happened in the past because of the accident. The father of the body owner is Kang Dae Gyeong. He tells his son that he is confident that his memories will come back as the days go by. The father parks the car in a luxurious building. They enter the house and the mother gently asks if Chan remembers the place. The father interrupts the conversation and tells his son to go rest. The protagonist obeys. Kang shows him his room and Chan enters. Then the man tells his wife that it is better not to fill the boy with questions. Meanwhile, Chan is impressed with the room of the real owner of the body. He says that it is much better than the commander's personal room. It seems that the original owner came from a rich family. The computer soon catches Chan's attention, but he sees that he needs a password to access it. So his attention falls on the cell phone and he decides to use the device's internet for a search. But it also has a password. The protagonist wonders what the owner of the body hides so much to put a password on everything. Fortunately, the cell phone has a fingerprint reader, and he manages to unlock. So Chan researches about the 2016 battle that took place in Africa. Maybe this way he can find some clues about his murder and reincarnation. In fact, the search did not result in anything. Chan searches in French and also finds nothing related to the conflict. He wonders if he should look in the French articles. At that moment, a text message arrives on his cell phone. A guy named Lee Hojun asks if he has been discharged. Chan assumes that Hojun is friends with the owner of the body and confirms that he is already home. Suddenly, the guy starts calling the protagonist crazy and asks if he really doesn't want to live. Chan is scared and decides to ignore it because he thinks that boy is not friends with the owner of the body. But Hojun sends one more message. He asks how Chan dares to ignore him. The messages keep coming. The protagonist just replies that he is busy. Hojun gets angry and calls him. The protagonist answers and laughs. On the other end of the line, the bully is bothered by the laughter and asks if he was brave after he left the hospital. Chan soon hangs up the call, then goes to the contacts and blocks Hojun. He definitely doesn't want to be bothered. The scene changes to a high school. A guy yells that he will finish that brat and then throws the cell phone on the ground. The other bullies ask why he broke the cell phone he bought 2 months ago. Hojun replies that Chan will buy him another cell phone when he returns to school. The bully is happy with the possibility of beating the boy. Later night comes and the protagonist continues to sit in front of the computer. He spent the day checking all the articles, including those specializing in military news, but he did not find any information about the conflict in Africa. He wonders if there is any reason for the battle to have been kept secret. The protagonist decides to smoke after so much thinking. He looks for cigarettes in the room, but doesn't find it and curses the original owner of Damn Nerd. The protagonist is sure that the boy has cigarettes hidden somewhere in this room, so he looks in the most likely places to hide. Suddenly, Chan ends up finding a diary, where the original owner of the body wrote that he was being bullied at school. He gave all the money to the bullies, but it was never enough. The protagonist reads all those words. The original owner wrote all the insults he received during the years he studied. Chan soon realizes that Hojun is one of the annoying bullies. In the diary, the owner of the body wrote that he wanted to eliminate all those damned. The protagonist laughs, saying that the guy shouldn't think about committing a crime and confess everything in the diary. He lies in bed complaining about today. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any cigarettes in the room to calm his head. Plus, now he knows he will be insulted when he leaves the house. The next day arrives. Chan is going to school with his father. Kang asks if his son will be okay. The protagonist replies yes and asks him not to worry. The father says goodbye and Chan gets out of the car. He goes through the stairwell gate wearing his uniform and wonders where his room is. It would be nice if someone came to help him. Suddenly, someone yells for Chan. All the students look around. Hojun asks if he wasn't the one who got extra steel balls in the hospital and is now feeling like a brave hero. The protagonist reads the bully's name on the uniform and realizes that it's that guy who bullies the owner of the body. Hojun is about to talk about the conversation they had yesterday on their cell phone when he notices that Chan is laughing. He asks what is so funny. The protagonist replies that he finally found his assistant. Hojun gets annoyed while Chan asks if he got his name right. The bully yells that because of Chan, he had to pay for his own lunch and cigarettes. The protagonist is happy hearing this and asks to borrow a cigarette. Hojin holds his fist, saying that he was going to wait until halftime, but he is asking for it. So the bully invites the protagonist to join him. The two enter the school's sports court. Hojin tries to punch the protagonist, which obviously goes wrong because Chan still remembers the mercenary training he received. At that moment, Chan punches the bully in the face. Hojin falls apparently unconscious. The protagonist thinks for a moment about ending that student's life, but he knows that doing it in the school will bring bad consequences. So the solution he finds is to steal the cigarettes that Hojin said he had. He checks the guy's uniform and finds nothing. Chan starts to leave the court while asking the owner of the body if he is happy with it. The protagonist hopes that now the real Kang Chan can rest wherever he is. Suddenly, the bully who is faking fainting gets up. He tries to catch the protagonist from behind by surprise, but it wasn't so quiet. Chan dodges and hits another punch at the bully. Hojin gets up quickly. The protagonist understands that he won't be able to erase this guy with just one punch because this body is not as trained as his old body. So the alternative he finds is to hit several punches until Hojin falls unconscious. The bully's nose drips red liquid. After being hit so many times, Chan also hits Hojin's chin. The guy falls to the ground and the protagonist keeps hitting. He stops hitting when he remembers that he still doesn't know what his room is. At that moment, the protagonist leaves the sports court and walks outside. He has no idea where his class is. Suddenly, a female voice calls for him. A smiling girl says that she is happy that he has returned to school. The protagonist is frozen in place, observing the beauty of the girl, and mentally says that she looks like Snow White. Then he notices the name Kim Myung written on her uniform. Chan still doesn't know what Kim's relationship is with the owner of the body and prefers not to say anything absurd. He also wants to avoid trouble since he is in his last year, so he only confirms that he left the hospital some time ago. Kim apologizes for not going to visit him. It turns out that there were some unforeseen events at the tutoring school, and she got very busy. The protagonist replies that everything is fine. Suddenly, Kim says that everyone in the room is worried about him. Chan asks, surprised, if they are from the same room. Kim notices the confusion and questions if the protagonist forgot that they are table mates. She tries to see if the boy has a fever, but Chan dodges her hand, saying that everything is fine, then asks her to show her the way. In a few minutes, the two arrive at the class. Chan sits comfortably in his chair while watching the view. At that moment, someone arrives in the room, calling the attention of all the students. Hojin displays all the injuries he got on that sports court. It even looks like he was run over. The students assume that Hojin fought with the gang of another school, as he always does. On the other hand, the protagonist regrets sharing the room with this delinquent. Hojin sits at the table on the other side of Chan, but keeps his eyes on him, while the protagonist avoids eye contact. Hojin sends a text message to his comrades saying that Chan has gone crazy, so they must reunite during the first period. He decides he won't let that brat go unpunished. Later, the teacher takes the students outside the room. Everyone changed their uniforms for a more comfortable outfit, with the exception of the protagonist. The teacher called his attention. Kim soon defended his tablemate, saying that he was hospitalized for a while and came back today. The teacher then apologizes for the way he spoke and leaves the protagonist free to choose which sport he wants to practice. But he asks him to be careful since he has just left the hospital. Chan sits on the stairs while the students play soccer and other sports. He is thinking about what he should do now that he is in this body. Suddenly, someone approaches. The protagonist asks what he wants again. Hojin replies that it will not be like this and tells Chan to follow him. The protagonist walks behind the bully while telling himself that he shouldn't have spared him. Hojin takes him to the other delinquents. There are 6 men counting Hojin. The hooligans are satisfied, thinking that they will make the protagonist a punching bag. Chan is soon surrounded and says that the men should attack soon because he is lazy, so you want to end it as soon as possible. The bully brown-haired replies that he is enough to finish off Chan, then clenches his fist and moves forward. The protagonist just turns his body and slams his fist into the delinquent's nose. The guy is thrown back while splashing red liquid from the wound. The 5 hooligans are shocked by the scene. The protagonist advises the 5 to attack at once. He even helps by saying that to have an advantage, it is better for each one to aim at points such as the head, body, and legs. The delinquents do not like to be underestimated and accuse the protagonist of having too much confidence. The group divides and attacks, but even if they are in greater numbers, the protagonist still ends up with them. The bullies stand on the ground screaming in pain. That first delinquent who was hit gets up. He pulls the protagonist by the hair and closes his hand to land a punch. Chan holds the opponent's arm and puts his body over his shoulder, then throws the boy to the ground. The protagonist gets mad that this body is not strong enough. In the past, one punch was enough to defeat the enemy. At that moment, Hojin stood up and seems terrified of the brat, who knocked everyone down. One of the delinquents uses a dagger to threaten the protagonist. He just looks at the coward. Suddenly, the guy tries to attack and is immobilized. In seconds, his arm is broken. After that, Chan turns his attention to Hojin. The guy starts to despair. The protagonist picks up the dagger that fell to the ground and says that this is all his fault. If he had eliminated the bully from the beginning, things wouldn't have gotten that far. Now the protagonist asks if he should use this dagger or break Hojin's bones with his hands. The bully loses all confidence and begs Chan not to do anything. He says he is sorry for everything he did. Suddenly they hear some footsteps. The teacher interrupts the duel. Chan is surprised because he could not detect the presence of the teacher. The man only warns that the protagonist should not exceed the limit of self-defense. Chan looks furiously. The professor scolds him for this and says that he will be expelled if he continues. The protagonist replies that he doesn't care because he doesn't intend to go to college. The professor questions what he wants to do with his life if he doesn't go to college. The man turns his back before the protagonist answers and says he will solve it. Then he should go home. The teacher also asks him to hand over all the evidence that proved that he was bullied. For a moment, Chan has the feeling that that man is someone he can't handle alone, so he decides to leave. Suddenly, the teacher asks where he learned to fight. The protagonist lies, saying that he saw some videos on the internet. The man says he knows it's a lie and wants to talk about it later. Chan just turns his back and leaves. The teacher didn't expect Chan to change so much after that incident. Later, the protagonist left school and walked through the city center. He wanted to change his style a little and went to the salon. Chan got the same haircut as his previous life. After that, the boy decided to eat a common Korean dish and went to the first restaurant he saw. He soon ordered a tonkatsu. His order was a bit nostalgic. In the past, the protagonist ordered exactly that dish before traveling to Paris and doing that mission. At that moment, the waitress serves the dish. The protagonist tries it and doesn't find it as good as it used to. Suddenly, his phone rings. On the other end of the line, the mother asks worriedly what happened today. Chan tries to explain that everything is fine and adds that he will talk about the details when he gets home. Suk apologizes to his son for filling him with questions and says he will pick him up, but the protagonist gets angry and yells that he will tell what happened when he gets home. After that, he hangs up. Chan apologizes to the real owner of the body for acting like that with his mother. He's sure the boy wouldn't talk that way, but he thinks his action is still better than jumping off the roof of the school. Meanwhile, at the family home from Chan, the father is very angry at the way his son treated his own mother. Suk tries to justify Chan's attitude by saying that maybe he has a reason to act like that. Kang replies that the brat changed after that incident. Suddenly, the door opens and the protagonist enters. He doesn't talk to his parents and goes straight to the room. Kang gets angry and gets up to scold his son, but Chan walks back to the living room with 2 notebooks in his hand. They are the diaries of the real owner of the body. He asks his parents to read it. Suk and Kang are terrified when they read the details of what happened in their son's daily life. They return the notebooks to the table with teary eyes. The father asks if it is true and Chan answers affirmatively. Kang yells that he does not understand why he did not say anything before. The protagonist replies that he felt ashamed and also did not want to worry his parents. He adds that this was the motivation for jumping. Kang asks if his son made this decision after facing the delinquents, and Chan replies that he did. The mother is relieved that the protagonist is not injured, although his hands have some bruises. A silence over the room. Kang makes the decision to take matters into his own hands, but asks his son to talk to him if something like this happens again. Suk agrees with her husband and apologizes for not realizing that he suffered at school. That scene of the parents crying brings back some memories of the protagonist's past life. His real parents were chaotic. His mother was a good person, but the father was a crazy drunk who beat him almost every day. In this life, the protagonist decides to treat his new parents in a different way. He agrees to tell him anything that happens from now on. At that moment, Kang receives a call from work. He says he will transfer the money and hangs up. Suk asks what happened. Kang says that the French correspondent reported a problem he is facing at customs because a document is missing. The local negotiators asked for $100,000 to find a solution. The protagonist was shocked by the amount of money, which is approximately 140 million won. Kang is thinking of sending this money so as not to have problems with customs, but Chan asks his father to let him sort it out. Kang agrees and lets his son talk on the phone. On the other end of the line, the French correspondent states that the local negotiators only gave 30 minutes for the deposit. Otherwise, everything will be discarded. Chan tells the man to pass the phone to the manager. The correspondent asks where Kang is. The protagonist replies that he is his son and asks again to speak to the manager. The correspondent asks for a moment. Chan's parents wonder what he is going to do. At that moment, the French businessman arrives to talk to the protagonist. Chan speaks in French with the man, surprising his family who had no idea he spoke French. Chan talks to the manager for a while. A short time later, he tells his father that everything is resolved. The negotiators found the document that was lost, and thanks to this, there will be no problems in crossing customs. Kang is surprised because he already knew that men lied to make money, but he didn't think they would let the products in without paying any taxes. The protagonist replied that From now on, his father will no longer be charged. He says that he threatened to destroy the entire place where the negotiators work if something like this happened again. Kang is shocked, but he says it's just a joke. His mother tries to understand where he learned French. Chan lies saying that it was on the internet, and Suk ends up believing him. After that, he goes back to his room. The protagonist lies in bed, thinking that he will have to postpone his trip to France. At first, he thought it would take him a while to leave, because his body was not ready yet, but now he feels that he cannot leave his parents. This thought is not something that happens often, so the protagonist tells himself not to think about things unnecessary, because he will leave as soon as he is completely cured. The next day, the protagonist already feels tired of staying at school and leans his head on the table trying to take a nap. Hojun approaches and asks the boy to follow him again. The protagonist asks if the guy doesn't get tired of failing. The bully promises he'll hit him today. Chan just lowers his head. Then Hojun says that he doesn't need to leave here if he doesn't care about Kim Myung. The protagonist can't let that threat go unnoticed. The bully imagined that he had gotten what he wanted. Until Chan asks who Kim is, Hojun yells that the girl went to the roof of the school when she heard that Chan would be there, but now he is acting like he doesn't know her because he is afraid. After this information, the protagonist remembers that Myung is his tablemate. He gets up so fast that he drops his chair on the floor. Without thinking twice, the protagonist goes to the school terrace. Some students are upstairs. Chan expected to meet yesterday's delinquents, but he doesn't understand why there are also girls here. A blonde girl notices his presence and offers to do inappropriate things. Chan just warns the girls to get out of this place. The girl gets angry and screams, questioning who he thinks he is. The protagonist hits her in the face. Then he tells her to go down again. The girl looks scared at the group of delinquents. Hojan says he will solve this and tells her to come down. The girl demands that they destroy this brat. Meanwhile, the protagonist wonders where Kim Myung is. At that moment in the third-year class, Kim finally arrives and is greeted by a friend, who immediately asks where she was. Kim replies that she was late because she missed the bus. She asks if anyone looked for her. The friend just looks at the ceiling. Kim follows her gaze. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that he has been deceived. Hojin mockingly asks if he thought he was going to act like a prince who saved Snow White. Chan agrees that the girl looks like Snow White. He decides to leave since she is not here. When he walks towards the door, he is surrounded by 4 men holding a stick with nails at the end. Hojin asks if he is thinking of jumping again. Those words bring a not pleasant memory to the protagonist, and he realizes that it was Hojin who was responsible for that accident. The bully asks if he lost his memory, and says that Chan was not forced to jump, but made this decision on his own. The protagonist begins to be consumed by anger and hatred. Hojun notices the tension in the air and says that the boy should not think that this time he will get away with it. A man in a sweatshirt is the first to confront the protagonist, and he touches his hair to intimidate. Chan just breaks the man's hand and slaps his knee in his face. Hojun yells for everyone to attack at the same time. Then the men with a stick run to the protagonist. It doesn't take long for them to be treated. Some are punched in the stomach while others are hit precisely in the face. The floor gets dirty with that red liquid that is splashed by the bullies. One of the cowards uses a dagger to sneak up from behind and secure an advantage. Fortunately, the protagonist notices in time and breaks the attacker's finger. The sound of the bone breaking is heard by everyone in that place, and the guy starts screaming in pain. Again, Hojun is the only one standing. The protagonist says that the guy didn't learn anything in the last meeting, then promises that this time he will finish him. Hojun starts shaking and screams for the teacher. Chan looks around without understanding anything and sees that same teacher who broke up the first fight. He doesn't understand what this man is doing here, but he feels that he is no ordinary teacher. The teacher tells Hojun to get these delinquents out of here, and adds that he will take care of him later. The injured bullies start to come out of the terrace. The professor lights his cigarette, while saying that Chan didn't wait even a day to do it again. The protagonist questions how the man I knew they would be here. The answer is simple. Kim looked for him and asked for help. The professor says again that this situation is bad, but he uses an expression used only by a member of the protagonist's squad. So at that moment, Chan has the feeling that the professor is Daeru, and also reincarnated in someone else's body. The way the man said that the situation was bad was completely similar to that of the soldier of the French squadron. The protagonist decides to prove it, and says the word hi in another language. The man responds in the same language. The next moment, Chan starts a fight. The two exchange a few punches during the duel, but neither of them is hit. The fight continues for a few minutes, and the teacher wonders how an ordinary high school student can fight like that. So he tries to know who the protagonist is. Chan returns the question, questioning who the teacher thinks he is. The two look at each other, and the protagonist screams, asking who he is. Those words bring back good memories for the teacher. In the next moment, the two shout together that the protagonist is the god of Blackfield. The scene changes to a few minutes later. The two French soldiers seem to have calmed down. The protagonist asks Daeru why his Korean is so good. The man replies that he has no idea. in the past when Chan was murdered. He was also eliminated soon after. That's all Daeru remembers. Then he woke up in bed with a woman, and the Korean language flowed naturally as if he had been born there. The protagonist says he understands and asks for a cigarette, but Daeru says he can't smoke at school. Chan gets annoyed that the soldier doesn't obey his orders. Daeru yelled at his former captain that it doesn't make sense to give something like that to the student. The protagonist questions if he will continue to treat him like this. Daeru says yes, because no matter how old his mentality is, in the end he is still in the body of a child. Chan gets angry because he can't argue. The protagonist looks back at everything that has happened so far. The soldier Daeru took over the body of Professor Suk Kangho. It seems that the reincarnation of Chan and Daeru happened at the same time. The protagonist asks if the man liked waking up in the arms of a woman while he woke up in the hospital. Daeru confesses that his reincarnation seemed much better. Chan was thinking of starting a new duel when he was scolded by the soldier. Daeru remembers that he is now a teacher, while the captain is nothing more than a student. So he must keep his voice low so that no one notices that they know each other from past lives. In addition, Daeru questions why the protagonist is causing so much. He should act peacefully now that he has reincarnated. Chan replies that he is only defending himself and does not intend to stay here for long. His goal is to return to France. Daeru screams in surprise and asks if he will return to that hell. The protagonist replies that of course. After all, there was a traitor among them. Chan wants to find the person responsible for this, so that the members of the squad can rest in peace. Daeru says he wants to participate too, and suggests that they do it on vacation. The protagonist asks if it's a joke, but the man says he's serious. Chan just asks his friend to deal with those brats so that he can have some peace in this school. The soldier says he is finishing the preparations. The protagonist asks if the guy was afraid after he reincarnated. Daeru asks if he didn't notice anything different when he fought the delinquents on the terrace. Chan replies that those bullies didn't carry any weapons. The soldier gets angry, asking if the captain thinks it's normal for a student to carry daggers and sticks with nails. The protagonist hadn't even realized that it was illegal at school. Daeru says that there is a criminal organization that supports these students. He intends to deliver all the evidence to the school's superiors, so they can travel to France on vacation. The protagonist smiles and asks Daeru to speak well of him to the infirmary. He decides to talk about the trip to France afterwards, so he says goodbye to his friend. A little later, Chan sleeps peacefully in the infirmary. Suddenly he feels a bad presence and gets up thinking that he will be attacked. Hojin is startled by the protagonist's fright. He apologizes for waking him up and delivering some food. Hojin tells him that the first and second year students will come to greet him after classes end. In addition, he wanted to say that Chan is the new head of this school. The protagonist just tells the guy to leave. Hojin obeys. A few hours later, Chan leaves the infirmary room and walks down the school hallway. The students start to dodge him as if they were afraid. He continues to go towards his room and soon finds Kim. The girl gives a smile, saying that she kept his things. She returns the bag and asks how he is. The protagonist thanks him for putting away his things and asks him not to bother him with questions. Suddenly, someone calls him. They both look back and see that annoying girl from the terrace. She tells Chan that there is a person who wants to talk to him. Chan pulls Kim by the hand and says that they should go. The girl was annoyed by the protagonist's attitude. Meanwhile, he walks with Kim outside the school. Kim Myung says that it seems that Unsil has his eye on him. Chan asks who Unsil is. Kim says that it is that blonde who came to talk to him just now. She tells the protagonist to be careful because Unsil has a bad reputation for sleeping with any man. Chan tells himself that Kim would be shocked to meet the Western girls. At this point, the conversation is interrupted by some men dressed in black who wait for the protagonist outside the school. The men confirm the identity of the protagonist through an image they carry on their cell phone. Chan realizes that he is being chased. Suddenly, the men call him. The protagonist comes to the conclusion that this is the criminal organization that Daeru was talking about. Kim trembles as she asks him not to go. Chan says goodbye to her, saying that everything is fine. Then he approaches the rivals and asks what they want. One of the men says that he is really cheeky, as they said. The protagonist feels that he will have a hard time fighting the four at the same time. In fact, his biggest concern is Kim Myung. The leader of that gang orders him to get into the car. Chan hesitates to follow the order. On the other hand, Kim mentally asks him not to go. The protagonist continues to stand still without moving. The bullies laugh, saying that he is acting like a tough guy. Suddenly, one of the men puts his hand on Chan's head, and he tells him not to touch him. The man says that he is losing his mind with this child. At that moment, the protagonist pulls his rival by his clothes and hits his head on his nose, then throws the guy over his shoulder. The bully screams loudly from so much pain. The screams draw the attention of the students around, and they take out their cell phones to record the fight. Another delinquent throws the student's cell phone on the ground while yelling at them to stop recording. Suddenly, a bully turns his attention to the protagonist and pulls out a dagger. He is scolded by the gang leader, who says not to use a dagger in front of the school. It is better to solve this fairly. The men obey and decide to fight unarmed. The protagonist notices their positioning and is happy to fight someone for real. The first attacker advances but is hit with several punches. The second tries to sneak attack and Chan hits his fist in the stomach. The first attacker gets up, but it doesn't take long to get hit again. The second guy also tries to hit him. The duel continues and the protagonist fights fiercely against the two. He realizes that it will take a while to take down these guys. Suddenly, the leader kicks his back. Chan is embarrassed for not having avoided it. He knows that Dare would have laughed if he saw that. The leader asks him to get in the car again. The protagonist refuses, and the man says that everything is fine, because he can solve it right there. Suddenly, the bully he punches Chan in the face. He manages to defend himself using his arm. But that doesn't stop him from feeling pain. Chan manages to free himself from the attack and hits his rival in the face with his elbow. The other bullies join in to hit his opponent. Suddenly, a voice asks if it's the police. Kim reports what's going on and asks the police to hurry. The criminals decide to leave. The protagonist promises to break their arm next time. The men get into the car and accelerate in the opposite direction. Kim breathes a sigh of relief because it's all over for now. Chan says it will be troublesome if the police arrive. The girl then shows that she didn't call the police for real. She knew that the protagonist didn't want to be bothered by the cops. Chan has doubts if this girl is smart or a hollow head. Suddenly, something catches his attention. Eunsil looks at him angrily. The protagonist approaches and says that if she depends on others, they will take advantage of her and in the end she will be discarded. Eunsil starts to push him while saying that he should think before saying things like that to her. The protagonist gets angry but gives up fighting and leaves with Kim. Eunsil screams, frustrated at being left alone. On the way, Chan complains of a pain in her stomach. It was probably because of the punch he took during the duel. Kim Myung is worried and thinks about calling 911, but he says it's okay, then asks her if she wants to go to a restaurant to eat tonkatsu. Kim smiles and says she likes this dish. The next day, the teacher talks about a very important philosopher. The protagonist tries not to sleep. This subject is too boring for him. The boy ends up sleeping and Kim wakes him up when class ends. The protagonist tells himself that he would rather go to the battlefield than attend classes. Suddenly, some students approach. One of them says that he is from the first year, while the others are from the second year. The boys bow as a sign of respect and then hand an envelope with money to the protagonist. He doesn't understand anything and asks who sent this. The men look at Hojin's desk and see that the guy ran away. Chan just says he doesn't want money and tells them to leave. After that, the protagonist goes back to sleep. Another student arrives to talk to him. Chan is about to explode in anger. The boy informs him that the teacher is waiting for him in the orientation room. A few minutes later, the protagonist arrives to talk to Daeru. It seems that he knew about yesterday's fight, so he told the captain to stop getting into trouble because he is no longer a child. Chan says that in the past, Daeru was the one who got into trouble the most. The soldier yells that this is not the battlefield. There are cameras everywhere recording every step. He believes that at this rate the protagonist will be expelled. It seems that Chan doesn't care about this possibility. Daeru takes a deep breath and asks for a favor. He asks the protagonist to take care of the 4 students who are being bullied. Chan believes that it will be worse if he interferes. When he leaves these students will be bullied again. Daeru says that he will be able to skip a class if he accepts his request. The protagonist gets excited immediately. The soldier says that he will register him as a special athlete. That way he only needs to attend classes in the morning, and if he sleeps the teachers will not bother him. In addition, it is good for the protagonist to accept being a special athlete because he needs to train. Unless he wants to be eliminated in the first week he returns to Africa. Chan soon agrees to take care of the 4 students. After the conversation, he walks down the school hallway. Eunsil waits for him at the door of the classroom and says he needs to say something. The protagonist completely ignores her and enters the room. Eunsil screams, asking if he didn't notice the bruises on her face. She says it's all his fault. Chan stops when he hears this and takes the girl to talk elsewhere. Kim watches the 2 of them leave together. The protagonist chose the school's terrace to talk without anyone hearing. Eunsil says that those guys told her to take him. Otherwise, Hojun will run out of tongue and she will be sent to a brothel. The protagonist sends the girl to ask for help from the police who are 5 minutes from the school. Eunsil screams that she just needs Chan to agree to meet with them. She cries, saying that if she denounces it will be worse. Her family is at risk of her life. Eunsil promises to do anything if he meets with those men. The protagonist walks up to her asking if she will really do anything. The girl replies yes. He then tells himself that he knew she was just like them. Chan wipes the girl's tears and tells her to compose herself. He says that from today on she should no longer wear makeup and just wear the uniform properly. Eunsil asks if that's all he wants. The protagonist questions if she didn't say she would do anything. In fact, the girl thought she was going to have to do something inappropriate to convince him, but Chan says that's enough and orders to call the delinquents. The girl hesitates to do it and he instructs her to make the call. The leader of the gang answers and is surprised because he was not used to receiving calls from her. The protagonist introduces himself on the phone. The leader soon realizes that Unsel managed to convince him, so he tells Chan to meet him. The protagonist sets the meeting for Monday because he is busy this week. The leader asks if this is a joke or if he thinks he can make such a request. Chan says that the man can choose whether to meet him on Monday or give up seeing him forever. The leader looks at the head of the criminal organization and decides to accept this decision, but tells the protagonist not to give up. Chan warns them that they should not mess with Unsel again. After that, the call ends and he returns the phone to the girl. She thanks him with a smile on her face, then asks for his phone number, saying that she can call if she needs anything. The protagonist smiles when he realizes that Unsel would be Smith and soulmate if the soldier were alive. He says goodbye to the girl and says that he will meet her on Monday. Unsel is left alone. Later that day, the class ends. The protagonist leaves the school thinking he has a lot of problems to solve. Suddenly, someone yells at him. Chan looks back and asks if it's Snow White. Kim asks if she can accompany him, and he replies yes. The girl seems a little bothered by something. Then she asks if the protagonist likes Unsel. Chan is shocked by the question. Kim says it's because she saw that they went out together earlier. The girl also says that she can't wear makeup to look as beautiful as Unsel, so she understands that he may be interested in the girl. The protagonist soon replies that he has no interest in Unsel at all. They only talked about yesterday's fight. Kim is very happy hearing this and thanks God. Chan asks why she is talking nonsense. He suddenly realizes that the girl seems to have been jealous and immediately asks if she likes him. Kim freezes in place and blushes. Then she turns to the other side embarrassed. The protagonist is sad about that situation because he doesn't feel like he's 19 years old. He still thinks he's 29 years old. Anyway, the two go to a field nearby. The protagonist is confused by what happened. Suddenly, Kim asks if he wants to kiss her. The girl even tries, but Chan runs away from the kiss, saying that they are students. Kim is embarrassed and says that her classmates already kiss. Chan wonders if the young people have changed that much. He thinks about how to escape this situation, then says that he will kiss her if she comes in first place in the next school test. Kim screams with happiness, saying that it will be easy because she always comes first. This means that he will have to kiss her. Suddenly, Kim becomes giant. She starts repeating that he will have to kiss her. The protagonist runs to escape the girl. The chase continues. At that moment, Chan wakes up and realizes that it was all a dream. Kim Myung never declared herself to him. Chan says that the dream was very crazy. A few hours later, he puts on his school uniform and leaves the room. The protagonist's mother looks at him confused. Chan asks if something happened. Suk says that today is Saturday, there is no class. The protagonist is surprised and says that he is actually taking complementary classes because he is in the last year. He made up some excuse and the mother believed it. From the outside, the protagonist called Daeru. Sometime later, the two travel together by car. Daeru mockingly asks if the god of Blackfield is taking complementary classes. The protagonist says that he has not thought of another excuse and asks where they are going. The soldier replies that they are going to a mountain to rest. The trip is peaceful. Minutes later, the two arrive at a house on the mountain. Daeru prepares the food and drinks. The protagonist asks where his alcoholic drink is. The soldier says that he is a student in uniform, so there is no drink for him. Chan reminds that the driver of the car should not drink either. Daeru says that everything is fine because there's a chauffeur service that he can call. The protagonist says that the soldier really got used to Korea. He questions if his friend is enjoying his current life. Daeru was waiting for this question. He confesses that at first he felt he was going crazy, trying to act and live in someone else's body, but he was helped by his wife and daughter. He thought about going back to Africa, but he knows that he will not live long with this body. The protagonist is silent. Daeru says that he has already risked a lot in his previous life. He thought it would be good to live in peace in this new life. Chan says that this country is too calm to live in. Daeru says that he should not say that since he fought 2 days ago. The two burst into laughter together. The protagonist reveals that he will meet the group of gangsters on Monday. The soldier asks the location, and he replies that he will not tell, but hopes that Daeru will follow him. The man says that the protagonist should not fight because he does not have the same body as before. Chan asks him not to interfere in his problems. After that, the two go back to eating in silence, but Daeru can't keep quiet and asks how many people the captain has already eliminated. The protagonist is surprised by the question. The soldier suggests that it was hundreds of people, but Chan doesn't want to talk about it. Daeru asks him to ignore these problems and fully integrate into this peaceful world. The protagonist thanks him for the concern, but knows that Daeru knows him very well. He intends to return to his old life. Night comes and Chan returns home. He goes straight to his room. Inside, the protagonist focuses on training. He remembers the last fight he had and redoes the same movements, only more intense. Although his mind is good at creating training, his body does not follow. The protagonist falls to the ground breathless. He fears he is not ready to fight on Monday. Suddenly Suk asks if his son is okay, because he heard some noises. Chan hurries up and puts on his clothes, then turns on the light and tells his mother to come in. The woman says she was going to sleep, but before she wanted to tell her son that tomorrow she will meet a friend. She will also take her son. So Suk invites the protagonist to accompany her. Chan didn't want to leave tomorrow. The mother says he can stay if he has another commitment, but the protagonist says he can go tomorrow. The next day arrives. The protagonist looks at a French restaurant while telling himself that he should be training. At that moment, Suk says that they should go in. They both enter the high-class restaurant. The woman looks around and finds her friend. Suk greets Seong-hui. The French customers are impressed by the newcomer. The protagonist understands everything the girls are saying and brags. He turns his attention to Seong-hui's son and greets him. The guy tries to speak in French too, but the pronunciation is very bad. The man thinks that the protagonist didn't understand and brags about being very smart. Seong-hui suggests that Suk pay a French teacher to help his son. The protagonist's mother tries to change the subject, but her friend asks if Chan is good at English. Suk replies that he is. Seong-hui disagrees, saying that Chan studies in a normal school. No, there is a way to evolve if it is not for a prestigious school. The woman is harsh with her words, and then justifies it by saying that she is only worried. Suk is silent listening to that. Seong-hui's son speaks his French again. He calls the waiter and asks for some water. Seong-hui continues to praise his son, saying that he is very good. Suk says that Chan also speaks French. The woman excitedly asks if he studied at a top-level school. The mother replies that he learned it on the internet. Seong-hui and his son started laughing. Suk feels bad about it. Suddenly, the protagonist speaks in French for them to stop. All the customers turn their attention to the table. The girls from before ask embarrassed if he understood what they said. Chan confirms, but says he has no interest in them. The girls blush. So the protagonist tells the girls not to worry because the guy at the table barely understands French and the two women don't speak the language. Chan was right. That guy thought he was talking nice things to the girls at the next table. Suk says that he is proud of his genius because not everyone learns French over the internet. The French woman who flirted with him previously is impressed by it. The protagonist is surprised that the woman understands Korean and says that she can join the conversation. The French woman finds the proposal interesting. The girls get up from the table and Suk asks what is going on. Chan says that these girls want to talk in Korean. The first girl is Michelle, the second Cecile, and the last is Cindy. Suk tries to greet them. Suddenly, Seong-hui gets up from the table and says that he needs to go because his son Desek has English class today. The protagonist realizes that he managed to make that duo embarrassed. He then thanks the girls for helping. But they say they won't leave. Michelle says she helped him and wants something in return. The protagonist is afraid of those words. The girl asks for his number. She is sincere and says that the girls are interested in him, and he must know when he spied on the conversation. There is nothing fairer than giving her number. The protagonist thinks it's a joke. The woman sits at the table while asking if he's the kind of man who breaks promises. Chan realizes that he won't be able to escape. The scene changes to the next day. It's Monday. The protagonist is focused on his training while still remembering Michelle's words. He laughs, remembering the girl. Suddenly, a voice asks what's so funny. Chan is startled by Daeru's unexpected appearance and leaves his position. He says he can't raise his arm after this warm-up. The soldier again asks him not to meet with the gang. At this rate, he will not arrive alive in Africa or France. The protagonist changes the subject and says that he will create a sports club for those who are bullied at school, so he can live his life calmly without worrying. Daeru says that it is a good thought and he would even be the supervisor of the club, but he doesn't like it when the captain changes the subject. He says again that gang are not ordinary students he can deal with. Suddenly, Chan says the mantra he used in the French camp, called "The Legion is our motherland." The soldier repeats his captain's words. The protagonist says he doesn't care about Unsil or Hojin, but he promised that he would solve it. Daeru says that he loves his wife and hopes that he does not go to prison because of the protagonist. Chan puts on the clothes and says that he is going. The soldier follows him, but he says that he does not need company, then asks if Daeru remembers Mangala. The soldier does not believe that he is listening to that. The scene changes to a few hours later. The class ends and Chan walks to the gate, where a car waits for him. The protagonist gets into the car and is taken to a factory called Cotton Candy. The minions show him the way. Chan goes through some room and goes underground. He memorizes where he is walking. There are 6 rooms on the right and 5 on the left. The minions show the room that the superiors are in. Chan faces the head of the organization. The man says that he shouldn't look at adults like that. Chan carefully observes the 5 rivals as he sits on the couch. The boss reveals that the superiors plan to bury him in secret, but he thought that someone as brave as Chan should stay alive. So he proposes that the protagonist join them. Chan laughs at the proposal, making the boss angry. He yells that he will be direct and says that he does not want the organization to interfere with his school. The protagonist adds that he does not care about the crimes they commit, but they should not involve children in these activities. The boss is disappointed with Chan's attitude. He says that the boy is nothing but an idiot. The protagonist tells him to shut up. At that moment, a lackey tries to attack him. Chan uses the food sticks to pierce the man's hand. The guy falls to the ground screaming in pain, and the other gangsters join the fight. It's easy for the protagonist to finish them off. The bullies are on the floor defeated. The boss realizes that he will have to deal with his own hands, but he is also caught by the protagonist, who squeezes his neck so hard that it almost breaks. Suddenly there is a noise outside the room. The protagonist takes the boss hostage to get past those armed security guards. He threatens to break the leader's neck if anyone approaches. Chan takes the guy hostage to get out of that factory. But the men do not obey the instructions and attack with an iron bar. The protagonist defends himself from the first one using his foot. The others get in his way, so he defends himself as he can. The boss manages to get out of the grip and gives the order to finish off this boy. Suddenly, the protagonist's foot hits his face, and he is pushed towards the minions. Then Chan uses the boss as a springboard to jump over the men. He quickly runs along the walls towards the exit. The crowd of men try to catch up with him. Some punches are thrown in his direction. The protagonist defends himself using his arm. He regrets not having his body from the past to face these dams. Finally, he decides to fight anyway. The protagonist exchanges punches and kicks with those men. In the end, he knocks down most of them. At that moment, other bandits approach. Chan realizes that these are different. They look scarier. The bully with the sword in his hand says he will slice his body and give it to the dogs. Chan is dealing with experienced assassins. At that moment, everyone is surprised by a new man. A masked man appears holding a bat. A delinquent tries to attack the man, but faints after being hit. Everyone looks incredulous. Not even the protagonist knows what's going on. The men who wanted to attack Chan change their focus. They turn to the newcomer. The masked man takes them down, one by one with ease. Chan laughs, telling himself that his friend is really stubborn. The experienced assassins don't understand who the guy is taking down his people. The man holding the sword says that it is better to deal with the brat first, so he takes the sword out of its scabbard and cuts through the wind. The protagonist dodges the attacks but ends up being hit in the legs and shoulder by a dagger. He has to deal with two experienced assassins who use sharp blades. A few seconds later, his whole body is injured. Chan has his clothes stained red. At that moment, the gray-haired bandit is about to give the fatal cut. Dairu looks back screaming for the captain. The protagonist has a flashback to when he served the mercenary squad. He was always responsible for the leadership when he went on mission. In the last mission, unfortunately, he lost his best friends. But he remembers that those soldiers always entrusted his life to him. They called him the God of Blackfield. It is thanks to this confidence that the protagonist does not think of giving up. He holds the blade of the dagger before it hits his eye. His hands are injured in the process. The bandit pulls the dagger back and is held. He tries to free himself from Chan's hands and can't. Suddenly, the protagonist approaches his face and says that he received an affectionate nickname from his enemies. They called him the God of Blackfield. This is because he was turned into a monster during the fight. At that moment, the protagonist says he will destroy him. Chan breaks the assassin's nose with a blow, then finishes with a punch. The assassin's minion is shocked and does not have time to realize that the next target is him. The protagonist also hits the man's face with a powerful punch, capable of knocking him unconscious. But Chan is not satisfied and thinks about murdering this guy. He is scolded by the soldier. The protagonist then retreats and looks at the remaining men. He gives them a chance to get out alive and orders them to hide in the room. The bandits obey because they think they can't handle those two. After entering the room, the protagonist falls to the floor in a lot of pain. He was seriously injured during the battle. The soldier mockingly says that he thought he would never see him like this. Chan asks why he got a monkey mask. Dairu's answer is that the animal is famous among children. After that, he says that he has to take him out soon and take care of these wounds. The protagonist hesitates because he is very stained red. People will call the police if they see him like this. Dairu leaves him for a moment and goes to check if there is anyone outside. Meanwhile, Chan tries to steal a cigarette he found, but he sees that the box is empty. Suddenly, his attention is directed to a few steps in the factory corridor. The protagonist's perception says that there are approximately 20 people. He's afraid that it is the reinforcement of the bandits. Other bullies arrive and he tries to get up. Their leader looks at the protagonist and says that he had doubts that he was a student. The man introduces himself as Guang Tika. He came here after hearing that the manager Gibum of the parking lot group was about to pick up. Parking is the name of the gang responsible for that factory, and that was destroyed by the protagonist. Suddenly, Chan interrupts him to ask for a cigarette. The footman feels offended and yells at the protagonist. He is scolded by Guang. At that moment, someone asks to get out of the way. Daeru checks if Chan is okay. Guang is impressed by the monkey mask that the guy is wearing and says that by now Gibba must be embarrassed. The footman joins the conversation to say that he checked all the rooms and the condition of the gang is not good. Guang replies that there is nothing else to do here. Before going, he offers to take the protagonist to a hospital that is nearby to take care of his wounds. It is where his men usually stay after a battle. The protagonist has no way to refuse that proposal because he is very hurt. A few hours later, he wakes up in the infirmary. Daeru is happy and soon warns that he needed stitches because his knife wounds were deep. Chan asks where he is. Daeru realizes that his friend is confused and says that he fainted as soon as he got into Guang's car. The memories of the chaos in that factory come back to the protagonist's head. He can only think how shameful it was. Chan was sure he could win without a scratch if he was in his old body. The soldier says that he was unconscious for a long time. It's already 1 a.m. He lied to the protagonist's parents saying that Chan would stay at his house, but they asked to call when he could. The protagonist didn't care much about this information and asked for a cigarette. At that moment, Guang enters the room and asks if everything is okay. Chan says that he arrived at a good time and asked for a cigarette. Guang tells him to forget about it and asks if this guy is really his teacher. The protagonist replies yes, because explaining Daeru's true identity would take too long. The man hesitates to continue talking, but Chan says that his teacher is someone very trustworthy. Guang decides to trust him too, and says that he profited thanks to the protagonist. There will be no one in Gangnam with enough courage to contradict him for a long time. So he is willing to do something for the protagonist to pay for it. Chan is direct and says no wants his school to get involved in a criminal organization. Guang says that he will give a warning as a friend. The boy must avoid problems for a while. Rumors about him have spread everywhere. This means that those who hate him will try to find him. In addition, there are many curious people wanting to test his strength. The protagonist replies that he does not care about his advice. Guang is furious at this answer and says that although Chan has brought profit to his organization, he should still respect his status and opinion. The protagonist asks what he will do. A tense atmosphere stands between the two. Guang gets so angry that his veins pop, but he soon recovers and suggests that the two become friends. Daeru joins the conversation and tells the leader to get those men out of the door. They don't want his protection. Guang asks what his profession is, and Daeru replies that he is a physical education teacher. The man laughs, saying that he will keep his men outside. He walks to the door and tells the protagonist to ask for help from his people if he needs anything. After that, the man leaves. Chan asks if the teacher shouldn't go to school. Daeru replies that he can go straight from the hospital there. He immediately remembers something and asks if there is anything between Chan and Kim Myung. The protagonist replies that she is just a child in his class. Daeru warns that the girl sent too many messages. Chan changes the subject and asks how long he will have to stay here. He is told that at least a month. Chan understands that he will need to stay in this bed without moving for a whole week. So it is impossible to pretend to his family that he is at the teacher's house. He then decides to lie and say that he was in a car accident. Daeru agrees, and they come to the conclusion that they will say that those guys who are at the door were responsible for the accident. The soldier gets up and says he will do it. A few minutes later, Suk bursts into the wardroom worried about her son. The protagonist shakes his injured arm, saying that he didn't hurt as much as it seems. His mother wants to transfer him to a bigger hospital and make sure he will be well taken care of. Chan tries to say that everything is fine. He is afraid that the doctor at the other hospital will talk about the dagger cuts on his body. After all, I would have no excuses to give because he said it was a car accident. At that moment, a doctor and a nurse entered the room. Suk asks Worry how his son's condition is. The doctor says he is fine, he just needs to eat and rest. Suk says he is thinking of taking him to the hospital Spayol, where he was previously hospitalized. The doctor agrees to make the transfer and the protagonist curses the man mentally. The doctor explains to Suk that the director of surgical services at Spayol Hospital is his friend, so he can pass on some information about his son, but still believes that it will be better for Chan to stay in this hospital. He may not receive the proper attention in Spayol because the number of patients per doctor there is surprising. Suk listens attentively. Daeru gives the thumbs up with his finger and the protagonist breathes a sigh of relief. The mother warns that she will talk to her husband, but for now she thinks it's better to leave the protagonist in this hospital. The doctor agrees and asks her to leave the room for a few minutes because he needs to change the bandages. Suk agrees and tells his son that he will wait outside. The doctor removes the bands from Chan's shoulder and is surprised by the quick recovery. He says that it is the first time he has seen something like this. The protagonist thanks him for convincing his mother. The man questions if the patient knows why he did that. He did it because he had a younger brother who became a gangster and came home with knife cuts. One day his brother was seriously injured after a fight between criminal organization. He went to the hospital and refused treatment. The doctor adds that in the end he was the one who announced the death of his brother. The protagonist doesn't know what to answer. The doctor finishes the bandage and says he has a request. He hopes the protagonist survives in all the fights he has participated. But don't murder anyone in these duels. The protagonist asks why the man continues to treat criminals. The doctor replies that it wouldn't make a difference. He wouldn't reduce the number of murdered in these fights. In addition, his job is to save people, and he doesn't do it for the money. The protagonist thanks him for the advice. The doctor replies that he saved money this time. Chan and Daeru say that he did well. Suddenly, the doctor says that if the protagonist arrives lifeless at the hospital, he will earn a lot of money with his organs. After that, the man says goodbye and leaves. The protagonist is incredulous at the possibilities of losing the organs. 1 week later, the protagonist returned home and put on his uniform to go to school. His mother says that he is still not fully healed to go to school. Suddenly, the protagonist notices something in her hand and asks what it is. Suk opens the envelope and shows that someone sent him 50 million won. Chan knows it was Guang and curses the man mentally. He tries to tell his mother that he will return the money and she doesn't have to worry. But the woman is already worried because it is not common for someone to send this amount of money. Changes the subject and says that he is already late for school. Kang says that he will take him. Then the two say goodbye to Suk and go to the car. On the way, the protagonist notices that his father has changed his mood. Now he looks more serious. Suddenly, Kang asks if his son doesn't want to tell anything. The man promises not to ask anymore if he doesn't want to talk. Chan decides to be sincere and warns that he was involved in a fight. He fought with some guys from school. It turns out that they were being supported by some bandits. The protagonist reaffirms that he managed to solve the situation without anyone being fatally injured. In addition, the bandits will no longer interfere in the school. The father asks why he lied, saying that it was a traffic accident. He replies that he did not want to worry his mother. Kang asks if he knows that Suk sacrificed a lot for him. At that moment, the protagonist notices a picture with an image of when he was born. Suk seemed not to be in good health at the birth of his son. Chan does not know the details about his mother's sacrifice, but pretends to remember. He assumes that Suk had complications in the pregnancy. Kang only asks the protagonist not to hurt his mother. He agrees. The father thanks his son for being sincere today. A few minutes later, Chan enters the school and finds Daeru. The soldier yells, asking why he is walking around. The protagonist replies that he was discharged and the doctor praised his quick recovery. Daeru says that his captain really is strange. Chan asks if something happened when he was away. The soldier says that some rumors have arisen. Some say he was murdered. Others say he is hospitalized with no chance of surviving. And someone said he saw him being arrested by the police. The protagonist laughs and says that this is good. He prepares to leave the sports room when he is stopped. Daeru asks what he is going to do. Chan says he will do what the soldier asked. Daeru is happy and the protagonist asks for the name of the students. The scene changes to the first-year class. The students brought the food from the cafeteria to eat in the room. One of the students in glasses is hit with a slap on the head while eating. He looks at the bully and is silent. The guy refers to the boy in glasses as Jin and starts eating his food. He says he's doing it for Jijin's health. After all, he doesn't need to eat that much. The poor boy agrees with those words. Suddenly, the bully asks why he's not eating, then puts a large amount of food in the boy's mouth. The students laugh at Jijin instead of helping. The bully continues to push food into the poor boy's mouth. At that moment, someone enters the room. The delinquent looks angrily at the newcomer and asks who dares to invade his room. He soon recognizes the protagonist, then bows several times to Chan. The protagonist doesn't care about that and asks if there's some Jijin here. The guy points to the boy with glasses. Chan approaches and notices that Jin is shaking a lot and greets him gently. On the other hand, Jijin wonders why the terrifying student is looking for him. Suddenly, the protagonist calls him to talk. Jin trembles even more and asks why he should accompany him. The students are incredulous, saying that Jijin dared to answer Chan. The bully scolds the poor boy, asking why he is talking like that to the boss. Suddenly, the protagonist tells the bully not to interfere, then walks up to Jin and says that they need to talk. Jin is about to refuse again. So Chan grabs him by the hand and starts to pull him out of the room. The students look scared. The protagonist says that everything will be fine, while noting that everyone is afraid of him. The scene changes to a second-year room. Chan and Guyan approach a girl sitting alone. The protagonist asks if her name is Soyeon. The girl replies yes. Then Chan introduces himself and says he's in the third year. He wants to talk to her. Soyeon starts shaking when she hears his name. The protagonist asks if she is busy, but the girl gets up and says she can accompany him. The three leave the room and the captain tries to remember who the third student is. Suddenly, the bully of Soyeon's room comes across the protagonist and calls him boss. Soyeon is startled by the man's appearance and trembles. Chan realizes. Suddenly, the bully bows and introduces himself as Siho from the second year. He was the one who went to deliver the money to the protagonist the last time. Chan just makes a movement with his hand, telling the man to get out of the way. Siho obeys and apologizes for getting in the way. A few hours later, the protagonist manages to recruit all the students who are being bullied and takes them to the sports room. He thanks the students for their presence and says that the reason for bringing them here is because he intends to create a sports club. He adds that Professor Kanko will be the supervisor, then asks if the students have any questions. Jean raises his hand and asks what sports they will do. Chan replies that he will teach physical training and the basics of self-defense. They can also choose another sport to pass the time. One of the girls asks why they were chosen. The protagonist thinks for a moment and says he wants to become friends with them. An awkward silence hangs in the room. Dairu joins the conversation and says that the students can refuse to participate in the club if they don't want to, but he is sure it will be beneficial for everyone. He points to a document on the table and tells the students who want to participate to sign. The protagonist shouts that it will be a lot of fun. The students are still afraid of him. Dairu asks the captain to hold back his emotion because he will end up scaring the students. In addition, he questions why Shan brought that girl. Kim Myung introduces himself kindly to the students, saying that she will be the manager of the club. Dairu asks why he brought a girl that the whole school expects to get into a prestigious college. Kim Myung shares the documents with the students, who apparently like her and feel safe with her. The protagonist reveals that he didn't bring Kim. He found her in the hallway and she was crying because she wanted to follow him, so he couldn't refuse her help. At that moment, a delivery man appears and says he brought the tonkatsu. Dairu says that she can serve the students. Everyone starts to eat the dish. Unzel observes the meeting hidden and then runs. Chan follows the girl and asks why she is wandering around. Insul replies that she is not wandering around. The protagonist decides not to waste time with her and tells the girl to leave. He walks back to the sports room when she suddenly screams. Unzel asks if she can really leave and Chan says yes. She questions if she is not being suspicious. The protagonist just replies that he doesn't care. After that, he enters the room. Unsil is frustrated for not being able to get his attention. Later that day, the 4 students signed the document to be part of the club, so the protagonist commanded the training. Unsil watched the scene from afar. The students fall to the ground after so much physical effort. Kim Myung pours some drinks to help with the headquarters. Ji-jin is relieved, thinking that it's over. But the protagonist says that he will start the official training. The students look shocked. Chan asks why they look so surprised. Gi-jin asks if they didn't finish training just now. The protagonist replies that this was just the warm-up. The students' souls almost flee their bodies after this news. A few minutes later, the real training begins. The ball catches Gi-jin by surprise and he falls to the ground when hit in the face. The protagonist says that the boy should not try to stop the ball with his face. He asks if everything is okay and the student says yes. Dairu scolds Chan, saying that it was his fault for aiming directly at the student's face. He says again that they are at school. The protagonist holds himself back so as not to insult the soldier and says that he understands. Dairu returns the ball. Then Chan says that he will show what happens when you purposely aim the ball at someone's face. He sends the ball flying with such force that it flies a spark. Dairu uses his foot to block and return the ball. The two are in this confrontation. The ball flies from one side to the other at a lot of speed. The students feel that there cannot be a more terrifying club than this. Sometime later, the training ends and the students go to wash. Chan talks to the soldier and says that his body is improving every day. Dairu says that the captain is recovering. Anyway, he thinks it's better not to keep this intense workout every day, so he suggests doing it twice a week. The protagonist immediately agrees. At that moment, Yunsil approaches and calls for the main character. He angrily asks what she wants. The girl replies that she wants to participate too. Her answer catches everyone's attention. The students stop washing to look at her. The protagonist replies no. Yunsil thinks it's unfair and asks why. Chan says that she is in the 3rd year. She should worry about studying and moving on to a university. Yunsil gets angry and yells that it doesn't matter because she doesn't go to any university. Besides that, she doesn't understand why she can't participate if Kim Myung participates and is also in the 3rd year. Dairu defends Kim, saying that she can participate because she has good grades. Unlike Unsil, the girl looks down frustrated and then looks at Kim angrily. Myung notices and feels bad. Yunsil turns her back and leaves. Later, classes end. The protagonist waits for the light to open to cross the street with Kim Myung. She asks if he doesn't think about reconsidering Yunsil's request. She seemed to be sincere when she asked to join the club. The protagonist replies that the girl doesn't fit in and can scare others. The light turns green and he says goodbye to Kim. The girl tries to tell him that Unsil can make friends with the students if they spend some time together, but the protagonist doesn't listen because he is already far away. He walks alone through the streets, reflecting on today. Suddenly, an unknown number calls his phone. On the other end of the line, someone asks in French how he is. Chan doesn't recognize the voice and the girl introduces herself as Michelle, that girl who met him at the restaurant. The protagonist asks why she's calling. Michelle says that he keeps making a fool of himself even after getting the attention of 3 girls. Chan says again that he's not interested and asks if she remembers that he's still a student. Michelle asks if he is not interested in French. The girl tries to arrange a date that day. but he says that he is still recovering from his injuries. The girl starts to say obscene things. The protagonist says that he can see her on Saturday, so the two arrange the meeting even though he does not seem interested. The protagonist says to himself that he only did it because he promised that he would do it if he received help. He walks home angrily. The scene changes for the moment Chan enters the house. His father is on the phone and decides to hang up the call when his son arrives. He says that the protagonist arrived early. Chan soon questions who it was on the phone. Kang replies that it was a customer and tells his son to go rest. Chan obeys, but has the feeling that his father is hiding something. A few hours pass and Kang remains thoughtful. The protagonist changes clothes and tells his father that he is going for a walk, then invites him to come along. At first the man refuses, saying that everything is fine, but changes his mind and says that he will accompany his son. It's late at night when the two walk outside the building. Chan finally asks if there's something wrong. Kang plays dumb, so the protagonist gives the same answer as his father, saying that if the man doesn't want to answer it's okay, and he won't ask again. Kang is happy realizing that he copied her attitudes. The man reveals that he really has a problem. The two sit on the bench. Kang says that he intended to import French cars and sell them here in South Korea. It would be approximately 50 cars. He would request more from the French company after they sold them all. At first the plan seemed to be perfect, but an external factor intervened. The Seojong Group established a subsidiary called Sejong Motors, and now they offer to make parallel imports of the same cars that Kang intended to sell. The protagonist is sure that those scammers were jealous of his father and stole his idea. Suddenly he is surprised by himself for referring to Kang as his father in his own thoughts. The man continues to explain the situation and says that that call he received was from France. The company guaranteed the monopoly, but only if Kang buys 500 cars with each purchase. They are acting as if Kang was the priority, but they made that offer knowing perfectly well that he would not be able to match their demands. Kang is sure that if he refuses the offer, the French company will close a contract with a much greater cooperation. The protagonist asks which car model he intends to import. The father replies that it is the Schiff. It is an extremely luxurious car. Chan knows that it will be absurd the amount of money to pay for 500 cars like this. Kang says that it can get worse. He gives up the money he spent on the contract of 50 cars, or he will have to do his best to sell them here. In any choice, the losses will be approximately equal. At that moment, he starts crying, confessing that he used the house as collateral in this contract. Things can get difficult for them if the situation cannot be contained. The man also apologizes to his son for showing such a pathetic side of himself. The protagonist says that everything is fine and adds that he just doesn't want it to affect his mother. Kang says that's what really worries him. He's doing his best so that Suk doesn't find out. The protagonist says that the man's expressions aren't helping much. In fact, his concern is very obvious. Kang apologizes for that. So Chan questions how things are currently. Kang says that the executives from France will arrive this week. The protagonist realizes that the French company is in a hurry. The father reveals that they decided to rest tomorrow and meet on Sunday at noon. The protagonist has an idea and asks permission to accompany him to the meeting. Kang says that he doesn't have to worry because he will solve it himself, but Chan insists on going with him and even says that he can translate what the French want to say. Kang is totally dejected and sad. He believes that he will have no way out. Suddenly, the protagonist gets up and starts yelling at his father, saying that they should try. If nothing works out, at least they did their best to recover the situation. Kang is surprised by his son's determination and agrees that they should try. The man says that he will need the protagonist's help even if the results are not good. He also asks that nothing that was discussed there reach his mother's ears. Later, the protagonist returns home. Suk soon asks about Kang, and he says that his father decided to stay away a little longer. The woman finds it strange. Chan says goodbye and goes back to the room. At that moment, his phone rings. He answers and regrets to know that the call is from Michelle, but soon after changes his mind and says that she called at a great time. The girl thought he missed her, but that wasn't it. In fact, he wanted to postpone the date for another week. The girl gets angry and the protagonist says it's because of some personal problems. She agrees to postpone it for another week and says that after that she won't give in again. The protagonist ends the call and turns his attention to what is most important at the moment. He remembers that he had an account with money when he worked in France. It would be nice if he could access it, but he forgot all the data he had. To make matters worse, he couldn't just call the bank and say that he was the legendary god of Blackfield. The protagonist calls Daeru and tells him about the problems his family is going through. He intends to call the nearest agency, which is in Hong Kong, on Monday. Daeru says that this is great, but he is worried about Suk. The protagonist says that he is too, and that is why he will deal with the situation as soon as possible. The scene changes to Sunday at the Namsan Hotel. Kang explains to his son that there will be 2 executives and a translator from their company. They know that Chan is his son, but he will tell the French executives that Chan is an assistant translator. The protagonist agrees and the father thanks them for their help. The two walk to the hotel. Chan is ready to help in the negotiations. As soon as he enters the hotel, Kang introduces the executives of the French company. At that moment, the protagonist is frozen in place. A man walks towards him with heavy steps. Chan recognizes that face immediately. It was the captain of the French mercenary squadron. His name was Charlin. The protagonist wonders how the captain is still alive. Charlin raises his hand to greet Chan, who was still paralyzed. The protagonist's father immediately greeted the man. Charlin speaks only in French. He scolds another executive who is flirting with one of the girls in the hotel. The man named Smith and obeys the vice president. The protagonist is shocked to find another squadmate. Kang asks if his son is okay. Chan replies yes, and the father asks him to greet the executives. The protagonist introduces Kang as the CEO of Kang Motors, then introduces himself as an assistant translator. Charlin compliments his pronunciation. He even thinks the way the protagonist speaks sounds familiar. Chan thanks him. Charlin introduces Smithen as the office sales manager in Asia. After that, the executives go to the table. The hotel waitress prepares to take the orders. Smithen keeps an eye on her and is scolded again. Charlin asks curiously if the name Kang Chan is common in Korea. The protagonist does not answer. Charlin believes that the boy could not understand his French because he spoke too fast. Chan quickly responds that his name is common in Korea. Charlin says that it is a cool name. The protagonist soon says that he is also familiar with their name. A silence hangs over the place. The waitress arrives with the drinks. Charlin is ready to start negotiations. Kang's translator warns about it. The protagonist's father refers to Charlin as vice president and says that it will be difficult to accept his sudden proposal. That's why he hopes that the conditions of the contract about having a monopoly on 500 cars will be modified. Charlin says that he won't change the conditions. If he wants, he can just sign the original contract for 50 cars, but if Kang does that, Seojeong Motors will also be able to import the cars under the same conditions. The protagonist realizes that Charlin hasn't changed anything over time. Kang says he has already paid half the contract price for the 50 cars according to the contract. Paying the remaining amount is enough to obtain a monopoly on shift rights in South Korea. Charlin says that he is right, just prepare facilities that match the requirements of the headquarters. Kang replies that it is great, because he has signed contracts with workshops all over the country to use his facilities. Now he only needs to prepare the other requirements. Charlin says that he gave the same conditions to Seojeong Motors and received a positive response. Kang is shocked because he thought they were going to close the contract. The Kang Motors executive says that this is absurd and they should take legal action. The protagonist realizes that this attitude of the executive can make the captain angry. Charlin really gets angry and says that he will accept those words as if they were from Kang Motors. He adds that this is a shame, but he will make a point of declaring that it was Kang Motors that started this battle. The man says he is leaving and Smithen accompanies him as the executives try to close the deal. At that moment, the protagonist enters the conversation. He asks Charlin to give a little more time, but the man speaks has no more time. The protagonist says he only needs a week and a night. Charlin questions if an assistant translator can take responsibility for his words. Kang asks if Chan has a plan. The protagonist replies no, but it's better than abandoning the game now. The executives of Kang Motors have a different opinion. They think it would be better to apologize now and request a renegotiation. The protagonist yells that if they do this, these people will intensify their attacks. Kang holds his head thoughtfully. Charlin and Smithen wait for an answer. Kang asks the executive to translate his words. As of today, Chan's words and decisions are absolute. This means that he will answer for Kang Motors. The executive is shocked and yells at Kang not to do it. Chan thanks his father for his trust. Charlin questions if he will also give up the technical assistance rights. If he cannot pay for the 500 cars in 1 week, the protagonist says that he shouldn't worry about it. The man has doubts about the extra night he asked for. Chan just replies that he will see. Smithen sees no problem. On the other hand, Charlin doesn't stop thinking that Chan looks like someone from his past. The protagonist asks if he agrees with the decision. The man answers yes and tells the boy to call the day before the meeting. After that, they shake hands and close the deal. The protagonist finds it strange to live with Charlin and Smithen off the battlefield. He knows it will be difficult to convince them both. After that, Charlin and Smithen leave. The executives try to tell Kang that now the French company has a reason to attack them. The protagonist's father disagrees because they created a situation that the French company did not foresee. It is a significant evolution, after which Kang says that it is time to leave. On the way home, Kang asks if the protagonist is really his son. Chan is surprised by the question. The father says he knows he didn't learn French on the internet. The protagonist replies that he can't tell the truth because his father wouldn't believe it. Kang changes the subject and asks him not to go after the gangsters for help. The protagonist agrees, and after that the two are silent. Chan sends a text message to someone asking to meet him later. The scene changes to a while later. Kang parks the car and the protagonist says he has something to do, then goes home afterwards. The father again tells him not to ask the delinquents for help. The protagonist replies that he won't do that. Kang takes a deep breath and enters the building, while Chan walks in the opposite direction. In the past, the French squad was attacked by an enemy group. They tried to save a village that had been invaded. Daeru fought side by side with the protagonist, again with Chan taking the position of captain. He crossed the enemy territory, jumping over some rooftops. Opponents use bazookas and all kinds of weapons you can imagine. The protagonist used speed to catch enemies from behind. At that moment, he shoots all the men. Several cars are hit in the sequence. The protagonist comes out of the flames saying that Zone K is safe. Daeru accuses him of showing off. Chan worries about the survivors of the village. The soldier reported that at the moment only 4 people suffered minor injuries. Fortunately, no one was fatally injured. The protagonist says that this is good and asks where Smithen is. Daeru says she hasn't seen him in a while. Chan had a bad feeling. Meanwhile, in one of the houses in the village, Smithen finds a survivor and thinks about putting his hands on the woman. She screams for help and he says he's just going to have fun. The woman screams that she doesn't want to, but Smithen doesn't back down. Suddenly, the protagonist breaks into the house and gets extremely angry when he finds Smithen in that situation. The soldier tries to pretend he was helping a survivor. Suddenly, Chan slaps Smithen in the face while yelling that he shouldn't try to deceive him. That day, Smithen was beaten so badly that he was worse than the enemies. The scene changes to the current moment. The protagonist remembered this situation from the past and had the feeling that Smithen didn't change anything. Suddenly, a car parks and asks if he waited too long. Chan says no and the man invites him in. The soldier realizes that he seems bothered and asks if anything happened. The protagonist says that he found Smithen and Charlene. Daeru is surprised to know that those guys are still alive. He questions where they are. The protagonist replies that they are at the Namsan Hotel. Daeru accelerates the car and says that he is going there. Chan asks him to wait a moment. The main character tells that those two have new and successful careers. Charlene is the vice president of Gonk Cars and Smithen is the manager. Daeru bursts out laughing thinking it's a joke, but realizes it's not. The protagonist asks why the guy is thinking of going to the hotel. Daeru says he doesn't accept that Smithen is the manager of something. He was the dumbest in the squad. In addition, Daeru has the feeling that they were betrayed by Smithen and Charlene. After all, they were murdered while the two are still alive. Daeru asks if the captain doesn't see this. The protagonist says that they need to find some evidence before they can come to a conclusion. Daeru says that they can find the evidence after beating up those traitors. Chan is against this decision, but the soldier accelerates the car saying that he will do things his way. At that moment, the protagonist yells at Daeru not to do anything absurd. The soldier obeys the order and apologizes for overreacting. He suggests asking for help from that bully named Guang. The protagonist thinks that Guang's organization would help a lot, both in gathering information and fighting, but he does not want to go against the request that his father made. The protagonist thinks of an effective plan that does not involve the delinquents. At that moment, Michelle calls him. The girl was at work and called to find out if he had solved the problem he talked about earlier. The protagonist replies that she doesn't and she regrets, saying that she was hopeful. Chan changes the subject and asks what the place of the meeting will be tomorrow. Michelle replies that she doesn't care about the place as long as she is with him. The protagonist takes the opportunity to arrange the meeting at the hotel. Michelle is delighted with the proposal and he soon tells her to take her friends. The girl asks what the hotel will be. The protagonist arranges the meeting at the Namsan Hotel at 7 o'clock at night. Michelle replies that she will be there tomorrow. After that, the call ends. Daeru asks who it is, and Chan replies that it is a beautiful French woman. The soldier thinks he is wanting to have fun, but the protagonist tells him to use his brain. His adversaries are Smithen and Charlene. Daeru finally understands that Chan will use the girls as bait. At that moment, the protagonist calls the hotel and tries to talk to Charlene. The assistant answers and says he will pass the information to the vice president. Chan sets the meeting for Tuesday at 7 p.m. The person on the other end of the line agrees. The protagonist begins to say that tomorrow he will have an appointment at that time with some girls. But the man should not misunderstand the situation. On the other end of the line, Smithen replies that he is jealous and says goodbye. The call ends. Daeru says that Smithen's reaction was not what he expected and asks if his personality has changed. The protagonist assumes it's because Charlene is close, so the man restrained himself. But he's sure that tomorrow Smithen will show up to see the beautiful girls. Daeru agrees that the guy should continue the same way. The protagonist tells the soldier to go with him tomorrow. He's sure Smithen will go crazy when Michelle and the other girls arrive at the hotel. It is at this moment that Daeru must act. The protagonist says that the soldier should kidnap Smithen at the first opportunity and take him to the car. Daeru is excited about that idea and intends to look for a quiet place where he can take Smithen. He also says that he will destroy the man personally. The protagonist asks if he will be okay alone. Daeru is sure he can defeat Smithen alone. Chan replies that maybe in the past he had a chance, but he will have difficulty with the current body. In addition, Smithen was good at arm wrestling with Daeru. The soldier remembers the duels they created in the squad and says that everything will be fine. All the times he lost it was because he used his right arm instead of his left. The protagonist says he understands, but he no longer has the body he had when he was a soldier. Smithin still has the same body. Dairu says he was just joking. The protagonist breathes a sigh of relief and says he will help him catch Smithin, but asks the soldier to know that if everything goes wrong, Smithin will have to be eliminated. Dairu says that if they are lucky, they will be able to solve Kang's problem and destroy those who betrayed the squad. The protagonist agrees with his friend. The two seem excited to put the plan into action. The soldier confesses that he is nervous, and he says he is too. Dairu goes back to driving while the protagonist focuses on how they are going to capture Smithin. He knows that the soldier's abilities are incredible, which means that Smithin is superior to any gangster the protagonist has fought so far. Later that day, night comes and Dairu leaves Chan at home. He says that he knows some places to take Smithin and asks if the captain needs a list. The protagonist replies that he will let Dairu take care of it. After that, the soldier leaves. Shin enters the house and finds his father making some porridge. The man explains that Suk has not been feeling well since he learned about the family situation. He also suggests that his son go to rest. The next day arrives. Kang takes the protagonist to school completely discouraged. Chan warns that he has contacted some people who know Gong's executives, and they will look for a solution. Kang again asks him not to get involved in illegal things, just to help the family. Chan agrees and the car stops at the entrance of the school. Dairu is there waiting for him. Later the class starts. The protagonist, as always, tries to resist sleep. Kim laughs at the situation. After classes, it's time for nerd training. Kim Myung supports their efforts and yells at them to continue. Eunsil watches from afar. Hours later, classes end. Kim Myung asks to go home with Chan, but he says he won't go home because he has other plans. Kim Myung asks if the protagonist will find a girl. He replies that he will meet Professor Kongho. The girl then says she will go with him. After all, she is the manager of the club. The protagonist replies that she can't go and leaves. Kim Myung is sad. Chan goes down the stairs of the school when he hears a scream. Eunsil asks again to join the club. He only replies that he will talk about it later. Chan enters the sports room and notices Dairu dressed formally. He says he thinks it's better not to dress like that. Dairu asks if it's bad. The protagonist gives up and tells the man to go as he wants. He asks if Dairu brought his clothes. The soldier says it's better to get dressed in the car, but Chan is against it because the space there is very small. On the other hand, Dairu is worried about getting the school's attention if they see them leaving in suits. In the end, he tells the protagonist to turn around and do whatever he wants. Night comes. Dairu stops the car at the entrance of the Namsan Hotel and says he will wait in the basement parking lot. Chan says he can wait in the hotel's coffee shop because there is no way Smithin can recognize him. After all, Dairu also reincarnated in another body. The soldier is afraid of being beaten by his wife, but he can't pass up the possibility of kidnapping Smithin. Then the man orders the protagonist to get out of the car so he can park. Chan obeys and enters the hotel, but inside he realizes that Michelle has not yet arrived and decides to wait. Suddenly someone calls him by the name of Boss. The protagonist looks confused because he does not recognize the man. So he introduces himself as Do-seok, one of Gwang's minions who yelled at the protagonist. Do-seok says that he works here and he can ask for help if he needs it. Chan tells him to leave. Do-seok obeys. The protagonist sits on the couch while wondering why this gangster works here. In a way, it will be problematic if Do-seok knows about his plan. At that moment, someone interrupts his thoughts. Michelle arrived accompanied by her friends. They were so beautiful that they caught the attention of all the people in the place. The protagonist is ready to put his plan into action. The girls talk to each other in French, saying that the protagonist is well-dressed and is more beautiful than ever. Dairu notes that he has already started the plan and makes the movement with his head, confirming that he will stay there. Michelle complains that Chan is not paying attention to them. The protagonist justifies by saying that everyone is talking at the same time, then asks them to talk one at a time. Michelle asks what the plans are for today. He says that first they will go somewhere else. Dairu carefully observes that he is following the plan. The protagonist takes the girls to a dinner table. At that moment, a hotel employee serves several dishes. Chan warns that he has not placed any orders yet, but the man replies that he was instructed to serve the dishes and is already paid. Chan thinks about who could have done it. The waiter says that those dishes are the most luxurious in the house. The protagonist gives up on prolonging the subject and Michelle asks for the wine menu. Then she turns to Chan and says that he must be very important. The protagonist replies that he actually has some acquaintances at the hotel. Michelle is more and more in love. On the other hand, Chan mentally curses the gangsters. He believes it was their idea. The wines finally arrive and the protagonist decides to continue drinking soda. He justifies it by saying that he is just a student. Michelle insists because she thinks it is okay to break the rules from time to time. The girls also drink wine, but they complain about how much Michelle is drinking. After half an hour of conversation, the protagonist discovers a lot about the girls. They are all 26 years old and met after working together for a while. Currently, Michelle is a magazine editor. Cecile is an employee of a security company. And Cindy is a freelancer. For now, things seem calm. At that moment, the protagonist's phone rings and he asks permission to answer. At first, he thought it was Daeru, but then he realized it was Guang and got angry. The leader of the bandits soon says that he knows he is wearing a suit at the Namsan Hotel. The protagonist replies that it is none of his business. The man tells him not to act that way because he is just wanting to be his friend. Guang adds that the protagonist can ask Do Seok for help and he will take care of most things himself. Chan hangs up the call and Michelle says that the boy is very strange today. It's as if he had set up a date with thousands of things to solve at the same time. She says that it is a female intuition and is sure that she is not wrong. The protagonist decides to tell the truth because he no longer sees reasons to hide it, and the girl can still help him. So he explains that there is an American named Smith and staying at this hotel. Probably this man will join them soon. Michelle crosses her arms while asking if that's why he called her here. The protagonist says that in a way, yes, but it's because he needs to check something in person. The protagonist apologizes for that. Michelle is thoughtful. The other two girls don't seem to like that information. An awkward silence settles in that place. Suddenly, Michelle says she will forgive him because he was sincere, so this time he will not receive punishment. The girls agree with her. Cecile says that it will be good if someone else joins them. The protagonist is happy because everything is going well. At that moment, he receives a message from the soldier warning that Smithen is already here. Chan then imagines that they can already go to the club, but Daeru sends a message in French saying that not yet, because the poisonous snake is in front of him. The protagonist quickly realizes that that is the name of a French gang. He asks if his friend is sure and the soldier replies yes, he was able to check a snake tattoo on 3 of the men who are in front of him. Daeru is pretty sure there might be more of them in the hotel. The limbs of the venomous snake have a red snake design above the left thumb. Daeru has even fought some of them in Paris in the past. Then the protagonist knows that there is no way the soldier could have confused it. He fears that these men have been hired as bodyguards for Charlene and Smithen. Daeru sends a text message saying that it is better to give up the plan today because there is no way to defeat these guys. At first, the protagonist agrees, but he finds it difficult for the members of the poisonous snake gang to leave tomorrow. In addition, it will be worse to face everyone at the same time and still have to deal with Charlene. At that moment, Daeru writes that the men are going to the club. The protagonist feels more and more cornered because his plan is going down the drain. The enemies walk underground and go down a ladder with bright lights. The girls notice the tense atmosphere. On the other hand, Chan tries to think of a second alternative. Without many options, he calls for Do Seok. The gangster arrives and the protagonist goes straight to the point. He says that there are approximately 4 Westerners in the club, then asks Do Seok to evacuate all the people when he enters the room. The man replies that he can't do anything without taking orders from the boss. The protagonist agrees and contacts Guang. He asks the leader to close the club tonight. Guang is surprised by the request and the protagonist says he doesn't have time. The boss replies that he can't do it because he only has a part of the shares. To close the club, he will have to talk to the other shareholders. Chan promises to carry out any request of the man if he gets out alive that night. He just needs to close the club. Guang is surprised by that and asks if he will really do anything. The protagonist passes the phone to Do Seok, hoping that the leader will accept his request. The bully informs his superior that Chan is asking to lock the 4 Westerners inside the club and evacuate the rest. The cell phone goes back into the protagonist's hand after a few minutes of conversation. Guang agreed to help him, but demands that he take some of his men in case things get out of hand. Guang adds that in 30 minutes some of the strongest fighters in his squad will arrive. The protagonist thinks this is a good thing because it's another chance for success if Guang's employees manage to stop the French gangsters. He then accepts Guang's condition and asks to close the club. The protagonist hangs up the call and Michelle asks if there is something wrong. Chan is sincere and warns that there are members of the poisonous snake here. The girls are shocked because they knew the French gang. The protagonist asks them to leave before things get worse. Michelle asks if there is anything she can do to help, to which Chan replies that by his scared expression there is nothing the girl can do. Besides that, one day he will return to France and does not want her to have problems for having been seen with him. After saying this, the protagonist gets up and says goodbye to the girls. He warns Do Seok that he will leave the girls in his care. The gangster obeys. The protagonist leaves the hotel restaurant and walks towards the club. On the way, he meets several people and is thinking if everything will work out. Daeru joins him and the two enter the club. Chan creates a plan as they go down the stairs. First, his goal is not to be noticed by the men of the gang of poisonous snakes. Then they will eliminate 2 of them with 1 hit each. All this will happen because the bandits will not be aware of their true intentions. Daeru asks what they will do if the men are armed. The protagonist replies that this is Korea He is sure that the men would not use weapons if they did not know what is about to happen. At that moment, some girls were walking towards the exit of the nightclub. Angry at having been expelled, they complained that suddenly a guy asked them to leave the room. The protagonist thanks Guang mentally. He finally arrives at the hall, where a party is happening. Some people are celebrating with alcoholic beverages. Fortunately, fewer customers than usual. Dairu shows where the members of the poisonous serpent gang are. The protagonist walks towards them until he notices a known person. Smithen greets him and asks where the beautiful girls he said he would bring are. Chan lies saying that they haven't arrived yet. Smithen says it's a shame and invites him to drink together. The two sit next to those men. Smithen asks who is the man that the protagonist brought. Chan replies that he is his friend and responsible for bringing the beautiful girls who will arrive later. He introduces Dairu as Seek. Smithen offers a drink to the soldier while saying that it is a pleasure to meet him. Dairu accepts the drink. Even though he hates Smithen, the protagonist notices that customers are starting to leave the club and Smithen complains about this. He says that he is disappointed because he heard the Koreans like to drink and party. But suddenly the place became completely silent after the few people who were here left. The protagonist says that he doesn't have to worry because the show is already going to start. At that moment, the doors of the club lock and the guard warns that something is wrong. Chan yells that it's time. Dairu knocks down the first member of the Poison Snake gang with a punch. Smithen tries to flee as the men are knocked down. Chan and Dairu use a broken drink bottle to eliminate the guards. Smithen notices the protagonist's murderous look and despairs. In addition, the whole place has been stained red. The protagonist has no time to chase Smithen. Because one of the men tries to hit Dairu from behind, he is stopped by Chan. Dairu takes the opportunity to catch Smithen with his bare hands. He manages to jump and knock the man to the ground. Dairu is so angry that he strikes the enemy several times in the face. The confrontation is very intense. The protagonist keeps eliminating the gang members. The last guard standing realizes that he will not be able to defeat Chan with his hands. So he takes something out of his suit. The protagonist looks scared, imagining that it is a dagger. The confrontation is very intense. The protagonist continues to eliminate the gang members. The last guard standing realizes that he will not be able to defeat Chan with his hands. So he takes something out of his suit. The protagonist looks scared, imagining that it is a dagger. And he was right. But thinking on the bright side, at least it was not a weapon. In this case, Chan manages to completely overpower the man and disarms him with a blow to the chin. The guard still tries to use his fists, but can't. Chan keeps him on the ground, and it is possible to hear bones breaking, accompanied by a scream of pain. After finishing the last man standing, the protagonist thought that the victory was his, but he was deceiving. Smithen won the fight against Dairu and it was just short of breaking his neck. Chan didn't expect to see his friend in that condition because he was too confident. The conversation with Smithen continues in French and he threatens to finish off the protagonist's comrade. Chan feels he can get into the mercenary's mind. He soon asks if Smithen doesn't know who he is. Smithen says he thinks his name is Kang Chan. The protagonist questions how the mercenary survived and if he was the one who betrayed the squad. Smithen doesn't understand the question. Chan yells that the person he is holding at this moment is Dairu. The mercenary, still confused, asks who the protagonist is. Chan looks at the enemy with fury in his eyes and introduces himself as the one whose expression made Smithen wet his pants. Even if now the protagonist was in someone else's body, that scary look would always be unmistakable. Smithen was sure he was seeing the god of Blackfield again. In the past, the mercenary feared Chan with all his strength. The reason is that the protagonist didn't mind beating and left Smithen almost dead. At that moment, the mercenary begins to loosen the grip on Dairu's neck and says that it is impossible. He saw Chan being murdered in front of him. The protagonist replies that he may have been given a second chance to live to rip off the traitor's head with his bare hands. Smithen admits that he could have been afraid of the god of Blackfield in the past, but now it seems that the leader's body is not the same, so he has nothing to fear in front of a weakling. The protagonist says that Smithen can check if he is curious. The mercenary squeezes Dairu's neck again and threatens to finish him off if Chan takes another step. The protagonist did not expect Smithen to use his head at this point. He has no option but to retreat. Suddenly, Dairu opens his eyes and makes noise, encouraging the protagonist to attack. Chan gets the message, but Smithen also notices and twists Dairu's head. Chan hits his finger in the mercenary's left eye. The pain is deep and Smithen ends up letting Dairu fall while putting his hand on his eye, wiping the red liquid that drips. The mercenary realizes that even though his eye has been injured, the pain is not the same as when he was beaten by the god of Blackfield in the past. Chan is forced to agree with the opponent. In the past, this blow was enough to leave Smithen fainting. At that moment, the mercenary raises the sleeves of his shirt and attacks the protagonist, but his face receives a powerful, precise punch. He tries to counterattack, but Chan's agility is surprising and Smithen cannot keep up. The mercenary is hit with more punches, but he remains standing because Chan's fists are not as strong as in the past. Smithin finds an opening in the protagonist's defense and tries to hit him. Chan blocks the attack with his arm and is propelled backwards. He understands that he is at his advantage. The only alternative is to aim at vital points to turn this fight around. Suddenly, the protagonist's thoughts are interrupted by the enemy. Smithin jumps under him while saying that Chan is really different from the god of Blackfield he knew. Again, Chan dodges the mercenary's fist. Soon after, his fist hits the enemy's face. The protagonist thought he had done well, but Smithin took the opportunity to land a punch to the side from Chan's belly. The protagonist did not give up despite it being painful. He kept hitting the mercenary's face with his fist. The fight is intense. Chan lands a few punches, but also gets beaten. In the process, they both get quite injured. The protagonist gets angry for not erasing the enemy. The fury makes him blind with rage. At that moment, Smithin staggers. Chan finds the perfect moment, and then hits the mercenary's stomach hard. Smithin tries to catch his breath, but the protagonist doesn't give him time and directs his knee to the enemy's chin. As if that wasn't enough, Chan strikes the enemy's head. Finally, he kicks the opponent in the face. Soon after, Smithin falls to the ground apparently unconscious. He doesn't make any noise, but the protagonist says he'll end it soon. Smithin looks at his rival and remembers that it's the same look as the god of Blackfield. The protagonist hits the man repeatedly. Suddenly, he stops and remembers that a mercenary is missing. Then Chan finishes off the opponent quickly and walks to the exit. He calls Do-seok and asks to open the door. The members of Gwang's squad enter the room with sticks. Do-seok asks if Chan is okay. He replies yes and takes the stick from the man's hand. Then Chan hits the guards who were still alive. The men are seriously injured. Before leaving, the protagonist speaks in French that this is how Korea works. Then he takes the broken glass bottle and returns to Smithin. The mercenary had regained consciousness a short time ago. The protagonist holds the man by the collar and warns that he will not finish him now. In fact, he will send him to the hospital. But from now on, Smithin will have to give up his favorite activity. The mercenary begins to ask the protagonist to listen to him, and then admits that the traitor of the French squadron was Charlin. Chan is about to use that broken glass bottle and says that now there is no point in admitting anything, it's too late. The mercenary screams that he has extra information. Charlin is using Kang Motors to sell diamonds and narcotics. The protagonist asks him to give more details, but the man is already lost, just repeats what he said before. The delinquents who work for Gwang realize how bloodthirsty the protagonist is. Smithin finally gives more details and says that Charlin intends to put narcotics in the imported cars that he will sell to the father of the protagonist. Chin thinks that this doesn't make sense because they said they would give the rights to Sejong Motors. Smithin admits that the cars would be sold after they received a payment, but on the condition that Kang Motors pass the car on to them as soon as it arrived in Korea. That way Charlin will be able to get the narcotics. Chin understands that his father is in danger. After all the information, the protagonist uses glass bottle and hits the bullseye's shoulder, but he thinks it didn't cause the old man enough because Smithin's body is too tough. Chan thought of using something else, but his attention was directed to Gwang's delinquents. The guy found a huge dagger hidden in the pocket of one of Smithin's guards. The protagonist thinks the blade will be perfect for his job. Soon after Smithin is hit in both shoulders, Do-seok and the other men even used to battle between gangs were surprised by the scene. Chan decided to stop there before Smithin didn't survive. Then he gives the order for the squad of bandits to take the mercenary to the hospital. Do-seok replies that it is more important that the protagonist leaves the scene of the crime to a car waiting for him outside the hotel. The protagonist agrees and in a few minutes gets into the car prepared by Gwang's team. The scene changes to a little later. Chan went to the hospital to see Daeru's condition. The doctor said that the man is being evaluated. This is a relief because the protagonist feared that his past life partner was not alive. The doctor soon warns that he needs to take care of his injuries as well, so Chan is taken to the ward and receives some bandages on his hands. He's curious and asks the nurse what is the name of the director of this hospital. Before the woman can answer, the doctor enters the room and says that his name is Hyun Woo. The protagonist is silent. Then the man says that he needs to talk to him. They enter a personal room of the doctor, and he remembers that he asked the protagonist not to cause trouble again. Chan admits that he doesn't know how this happened. Hyun replies that he called him here because the results of his chest x-ray came out 3 of his left ribs are about to break, and his interior is in chaos. This means that the protagonist must be hospitalized immediately, or his organs may be harmed. Chan replies that he cannot stop now and only asks the doctor to make some bandages. But Hyun is against it because the protagonist's health condition is really worrying. Chan doesn't care and says that the doctor can sell his body when he passes away. Hyun replies that he wouldn't be able to sell anything because everything is in bad condition. The two don't agree with each other, and the doctor tries to understand the reason for the insistence on leaving. The protagonist replies that his family will be at risk if he stays here. In this case, the doctor doesn't have much choice. He decides to prescribe some painkillers and wrap the protagonist with the strongest rib belt. But the doctor warns that he should never remove the belt, and it will be important that he returns to the hospital as soon as he deals with his problems. Chan puts the belt as tight as he can and walks towards the exit of the hospital. Do-seok runs to him asking if everything is okay. The protagonist confirms and questions where his companion is. The man points to Daeru's room. Chan checks his friend's condition. Despite being very broken, Daeru is alive. The protagonist insults him for going too far, even though he knows he couldn't handle Smithin. He wishes Daeru a good recovery and promises that he will take care of the rest. After these words, the protagonist goes to his enemy's room. The Guan bandits were protecting the door and bowed when they realized it was Chan. Inside, the Smithin soldiers seem to laugh at the situation and talk in French. They tease each other saying that they were beaten because they were caught suddenly. The protagonist is willing to destroy that spirit of joy. At this moment, he asks Guang's men to bring what he left with them earlier. It seems that Smithin's mercenaries don't understand the gravity of the situation. One of them shows the middle finger to the protagonist as a sign of provocation, but everything changes when Chan takes the dagger he kept. He apologizes to Hyun mentally for doing it in his hospital. There is no other place. The protagonist soon warns the targets that they will stay alive. They will only get sick enough to breathe. Even at that moment, the delinquents make threats. The first one is hit in several points of the chest and shoulder. He finally asks for forgiveness and begs the protagonist to stop. Chan goes towards the next guard and does the same thing while the guy screams in pain. Guang's thugs look at the scene through the transparent opening of the door. It's the first time they've seen someone so bloodthirsty. They prefer not to look, but soon the screams stop and the protagonist opens the door. The men see that he is very stained red, proving that it was worse than they imagined. Chan gives the order for the 3 French guards to be taken to another room. The bandits obey. Only Smithin stays in the room, but he has a blindfold on his eye because of the injuries, and even then is able to detect the presence of the protagonist. Smithin screams asking if he will be next and remembers that the god of Blackfield promised to leave him alive. Chan confirms that he will live a long time yet, but maybe he doesn't have 2 legs to walk. At that moment, Smithin begs his former companion to listen to him. He then asks if the protagonist doesn't remember that he was the first to be hit in the stomach during that confrontation in Africa. The mercenary, he says that he only survived because Charlene led a rescue team where they were injured. The protagonist then asks how Smithin has the courage to follow a traitor, even though he knows that Charlene did all this to them. The mercenary replies that the entire squad was sold for diamonds. When he found out he had nothing else to do, there were gangs everywhere, and he had no option but to follow Charlene. The protagonist shouts that in fact Smithin only thought about himself. The mercenary had a chance to tell everyone about Charlene's betrayal, but preferred to follow him with the dog. Chan then loses his patience and hits the mercenary's legs. While asking if there is anyone with Charlene in Korea, Smithin yells that there are 2 armed men from Glock 19 and Gen 4. Chan holds the dagger away from the mercenary's body, while realizing that it is that they had weapons. Since their goal from the beginning was to traffic, it was not to sell cars. This also makes Chan realize that he and Daeru could have been murdered if they had clashed with the armed men of Charlene. At that moment, the protagonist gives the last blow to Smithin's leg and leaves the room. He knows that Charlene will not start a shooting when he finds out what happened because of the Korean media, but they thought of something else to solve the situation. Suddenly, Dr. Hyun finds him in the hospital corridor and screams, asking if Chan has gone crazy. People should be safe here. He says that his own job is at risk after what Chan did. The protagonist has a justification for this and says that these men are from a French gang. They would probably finish off the doctors and patients of this place when they recover. Hyun is silent, realizing that Chan is right. The protagonist adds that he left the men alive, only incapacitated, but he can come back later and finish what he started. The doctor asks if anyone is still missing. Chan says yes, there are 3 armed men left. Hyun gives a satisfied smile and says that he cannot lose a patient without medical insurance and with deep pockets full of money, then asks the protagonist to come back when dealing with the problematics. Chan nods and leaves Smithin's room. The doctor and nurse prepare to take the injured to the emergency room. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks of someone who can take him to the hotel now that Daeru is hospitalized. Asking Guan for help is not an option because the bandit has already done a lot. In addition, the protagonist also does not know how to make Charlene come down from the room to meet him. Charlene is not as easy as Smithin. To make matters worse, the protagonist knows that confronting him in this physical condition will not be good. Charlene is also armed, and with 2 other trained soldiers, defeating him will be impossible. In this case, the protagonist is at a disadvantage in any scenario. He thinks about all the information he has gotten so far, but something doesn't make sense. Charlene assigned 3 gangsters to Smithin, who was simply going to flirt with women. The protagonist tries to understand why he did it. To top it off, Charlene is using guns in a country without guns, and without having realized that he and Daeru existed. In this case, the protagonist does not know why it was necessary to assign these guards to a man as strong as Smithin. Suddenly, an idea comes into his mind and Chan concludes that the guards were not to protect Smithin. In fact, they were there to watch the mercenary. Probably Smithin knows about the secret or some weakness of Charlene. This also makes the protagonist understand that the one who is really in a hurry is Charlene. By now, he must be losing his mind. Chan has an idea and goes back to Smithin's room. The doctor asks what he wants now. Chan asks if they both know French. The answer is no. Hyun says he knows the basics of English only. The protagonist says it's great, so he talks in French with Smithin, but the mercenary doesn't want to hear his voice. Chan asks an important question. He tries to know what Charlene would do when receive the diamond money. Smithin hesitates to answer, so he is held by the chin while Chan promises to finish him off. The mercenary asks if it's okay to speak in front of these people. Chan says he doesn't have to worry about the story leaking, because they don't speak French. Then the protagonist asks why Charlene kept him alive. He knew the boss and knew he was cautious. Smithin replies that it's because of the account password. They both agreed to split the money in half. That's why Charlene hesitates to murder Smithin, because he will lose the other half of the money. The protagonist thinks this strategy is too smart for Smithin to have thought of on his own. Then he ordered the mercenary to be honest and asked why Charlene spared his life. Smithin is sincere in saying that he has no idea. After the incident in Africa, Charlene took him to the hospital and said never to talk about it. There are still 10 million euros left, equivalent to 10 billion won. The protagonist asks if this diamond is Blackhead. Smithin confirms Blackhead is a gem that only appears once every few decades, also known as the Devil's Gemstone. The protagonist finally understands why Charlene betrayed all the French mercenaries. Now he wants to know about the narcotics. Smithin says that Charlene only has samples of them, but he doesn't know who the boss is selling it to. The mercenary swears he doesn't know about it. Chan knows he can't trust Smithin so much. Anyway, he doesn't seem to be lying. So the protagonist asks the last question. This time he wants to know the bank password. Smithin hesitates and says that this is too much. Chan then asks the doctor to speak as if he was angry. He promises that Smithin only speaks in French and will not understand anything. Hyun agrees and yells asking if Nurse Kim wants to have a stew for dinner today. Smithin is scared without understanding a word. The protagonist participates in the conversation while speaking out loud. Then he tells Smithin that this is the last chance to tell password. The mercenary finally confesses and the password is dumber than the protagonist thought. It's simply Smithin's name with some numbers. Meanwhile, outside the room, Gwang's thugs talk about what they saw today. The protagonist approaches them and soon notices that the phone is not in his pocket. He asks the bandit head of the team to help him and call Gwang. The thug obeys and hands over the phone when the boss answers. Chan takes a distance from the men and warns Gwang that there are some samples of narcotics in the Namsan hotel. The boss is surprised and claims not to know about it. The protagonist wanted to talk to Gwang because he is a gangster and could make the purchase of these narcotics. In addition, Chan realizes that he was careless. He would be losing me if Gwang was Charlene's partner. In fact, the boss was annoyed that someone is selling this in his territory without authorization. The protagonist understands that Gwang is not involved and reveals there are 3 French guys with samples. The boss of the bandits finds it very strange because he should have already notified if someone was trading in this area. Chan says that the information he received is that the sellers are from the Poisonous Snake, a gang from France, so it is a fact that there are also weapons with them, but the protagonist plans to end it today. Gwang is against it because the boy has already caused a lot of trouble in the hotel. Instead, it is better for the protagonist to lure the target to a quiet village towards Namyangju. Gwang offers a car in case Chan needs to drive. The protagonist reminds the boss that these French are not ordinary fighters and should not be provoked. Gwang understands that Chan wants to warn him that it is not safe to take enemies into his territory. So he asks if the protagonist feels safer in the hotel. Chan says he needs to think about it for a while. Gwang agrees and asks him to contact him when he decides. The call comes to an end and Chan asks the crook to call the hotel. The man obeys and passes the phone as soon as the employee answers. The protagonist asks for the call to be sent to room 1901, where Charlene is. The secretary asks for a moment. Someone enters the call and says that Charlene is not available right now, but he will pass on the message. At that moment at the Namsan Hotel, Charlene was attending a meeting with 2 executives when he was disturbed by one of his men. The guy soon informed that he received an important call and should pass it on as soon as possible. He whispers in the boss's ear that the man on the other end of the line said 3 things: Swiss bank, narcotics, and that the god of Blackfield was waiting for him outside the hotel. At that moment, the protagonist asks the bandit to call Dosok. The man answers and asks if something happened. Chan warns that he must report all the movements of a guest named Charlene. Doseok warns that he is currently in the restaurant having a meeting with some Korean guests. From what he heard from some employees, these guests are important executives of Sejong Motors. The protagonist was surprised by this information and asked Doseok to keep an eye on it. The bandit agrees and warns that he cleaned the club and reopened. Chan remembers that he forgot his phone when he was fighting with the French, then asks if Doseok can look for it. The bandit agrees. At this point, the protagonist makes another request. He asks Doseok to enter Charlone's room while he is away and see if there is anything important. The bandit apologizes and warns that he cannot do this. Not even Chief Guang is authorized to enter the rooms. The protagonist understands that he asked for too much and warns that he just has to keep his eyes on Charlone. The call comes to an end. Meanwhile, in the hotel restaurant, Charlone grits his teeth in anger when he hears about the god of Blackhead, but he soon regains his good mood when he remembers the executives. Charlone informs him that an emergency has arisen and he needs to leave. The Koreans say that there is no problem because they have already talked about everything that was important. Charlone thanks you for your understanding and leaves the restaurant. A man sitting in the office calls someone as soon as Charlone walks through the door. The French mercenary is completely furious, thinking that this is Smithen's thing. After all, he saw Chan being murdered in front of him, so it was impossible for the god of Blackfield to be alive. At that moment in the hospital, the protagonist receives the information that Charlone has returned to the room. The Guang thugs also checked the club and did not find the lost phone. The protagonist regrets losing such an important item and thanks for the new information. He hangs up the phone and checks the minutes pass on the screen. As soon as the exact moment arrives, the protagonist calls Charlone's room again and introduces himself. Both talk in French. Charlone soon warns that he heard that Chan discovered something with Smithen, but makes it clear that this does not give him permission to get involved in matters that are not his, so Charlone suggests an exchange. The protagonist must tell where Smithen is, and in exchange he will receive the monopoly rights to the cars. It doesn't take long for Chan to realize that the mercenary trader wants Smithen's location, because he thinks he betrayed him. The protagonist continues the deal and asks if the man wants to sell the rights even if Kang Motors doesn't pay the contracted amount. Charlone confirms, just say Smithen's location. The protagonist replies that he needs the document first. Charlone gets more and more annoyed with his wishes being ignored, but Chan says it's because the Frenchman doesn't seem very trustworthy. The mercenary boss says that the protagonist doesn't know him and doesn't even know the organization behind him, so he must tell Smithen's location soon. Chan stands firm and says that he wants the contract first. Charlone realizes that he will have no other choice and warns that it takes a while to authenticate the contract and announce it. The protagonist makes it clear that he knows about the Swiss bank. In addition, he knows that Charlone just wants to buy time. The mercenary is visibly angry and calls him a brat. He adds that Chan really looks like the god of the Blackfield. The protagonist says not to change the subject because he has no time to waste. He reveals that he knows about the narcotics, Swiss bank and diamond. This confirms that the protagonist is with Smithen. Charlone has no other choice and decides to end the contract tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the business center in the Namsan Hotel. Chan is bothered because he didn't remember that his father was involved in the business. If something gets out of control, his family could end up being in danger. Charlone doesn't hear the protagonist's answer and asks if he agrees to meet him tomorrow. Chan replies yes and soon hangs up the phone. Charlone gets so angry that he yells that he's going to finish this brat. The mercenary felt the air of superiority over the phone, which only confirmed that the god of Blackfield really was on the other end of the line. On the other hand, the protagonist knew that his opponent this time was different from Smithen, so he decides to prepare after thinking a little about everything that happened today. The protagonist thinks it's better to go home. But before the boy thinks about what story to invent for the family, he has an idea and asks to use the hospital phone. The secretary agrees and hands over the device. Chan takes a deep breath and a smile appears on his face. Kang answers the phone quickly and is relieved to realize that it is his son. He asks why the protagonist did not answer the calls, and if he is already coming home. Chan replies that he is already going, so the father says that he can tell the details when he arrives. The protagonist agrees and hangs up the phone. A flashback of his new family invades his mind. Chan did not have a good relationship with his real parents from the past life, but in this new life it was different. He had parents who cared about him and waited for him at home. Then the protagonist made the decision to go home and make sure everything was fine. But before he asks the bandit of Guang's squad to bring him an outfit that he can wear, the man agrees and Chan remembers something. He asks the bandit to warn Guang and Doseok that he made an appointment with Charlone at 10 o'clock tomorrow. So if something happens by then, they need to contact him immediately. The crook obeys and says he will pass on the information. Meanwhile, at the protagonist's house, Kang warned his wife that their son was already coming back. A smile of relief appears on Suk's face. Her husband warns her that now she can rest. Everything is fine with Chan, so she needs to take care of her own health. Suddenly, Kang receives a call on his cell phone. He is surprised to see that he is one of the executives of Kang Motors. On the other end of the line, the director informs that the French group has scheduled a meeting for tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Kang asks why so suddenly, but the director doesn't know either. Anyway, the protagonist's father agrees because he really wanted those cars. He thanks the director for the information and the call comes to an end. Suk soon asks what happened. The husband explains that if the contract is signed, they will receive a monopoly on all cars produced by Gongt and not just Schiff. It is likely that tomorrow morning the contract will be signed. He does not know why the French decided this out of nowhere, but it seems that it was because of Chan. Now the father feels guilty for having scolded him on the phone. He thinks that the protagonist has been out of the house all this time to settle the contract. At that moment, they hear a noise at the door and run to receive his son. Suk notices the bandages on his hands and asks what happened. The protagonist lies, saying that it was at the gym. Kang approaches and says that he just got a call about the meeting tomorrow. He asks how his son did it. Chan says that he had the help of a friend on the internet. Suddenly, Suk hugs him with all his strength and cries, which makes the protagonist worried. He says that Kang did most of the work. He only helped. Chan also asks his mother to take care of her health. This is more important than any contract. At that moment, the protagonist hugs her back and mentally says that this is the feeling of having a family. He enjoys it, the opportunity to make up a story about Daru. The protagonist warns that his physical education teacher has been in a traffic accident and is in the hospital, so he needs to go visit him. The mother asks if the teacher doesn't have any family members, but Chan says that they are traveling. Kang quickly agrees and tells his son to go. The mother reluctantly accepts. The father says he will get a cigarette, and they can go down together. A few minutes later, the protagonist is alone with Kang. The father soon asks if he was helped by the gangsters. Chan says no. Then the man asks him to be sincere, because he won't believe him if his son says again that the internet helped him. Chan just says that he received a proposal from Charlene, but he doesn't want to talk about it now. The protagonist makes it clear that he will have to lie to his father if he insists on knowing. Kang understands and prefers to change the subject. He thanks him for his help and says that he is in debt this time. The father clarifies that it makes no sense to make billions if Shan is not in good health, so he asks his son to be careful. The protagonist promises that he will not get hurt. He returns to the hospital a few minutes later. The gangster bows in respect, but the protagonist can't stand the greeting anymore. The man then goes straight to the point and says that the teacher woke up. A smile appeared on Chan's face and he went to see his friend. Daru asks if the guy really thought he was going to lose to Smithin and leave this life so easily. The protagonist jokes that he was defeated. The professor makes it clear that he also hit Smithin. He worries about his captain's physical condition and asks how Chan is. The protagonist shows the bandage on his hand and says that he broke some ribs and hurt his hands a little, but it's no big deal. Daru asks if there is a way to warn his wife that he had a traffic accident. Chan says he has already done it. Fortunately, they both thought of the same excuse. Daru feels very uncomfortable in the hospital and asks his friend to get a cigarette that is in the pocket of his jacket. The guy just wants to be calm. The protagonist obeys and says he's going to smoke a cigarette too. Daru doesn't allow it because he's still a student. Chan thinks it's unfair. Even so, he helped his friend get comfortable in the hospital bed and lit the cigarette. Daru finds it funny that the protagonist, even though he's his captain, still can't smoke. Anyway, now he's curious to know the details of what happened while he was unconscious. The protagonist summarizes the latest events. Daru listens carefully and says that he has 2 requests to make to the captain. Chan has to perform at least one. The first is to let Charlene go tomorrow. The protagonist thinks this is absurd, but Daru reminds him that there is the contract with Kang. In addition, it seems that Charlene is planning to return after rescuing Smithin. So there's nothing else they can do. This outcome is definitely better than either of them losing their life, or the protagonist's father losing that contract. Chan replies that he won't do that. Daru already hoped that he wouldn't accept the first option just because he wants to pursue Charlene, so he gives the second alternative. That is to take him to Smithin now. Daru understands that it is the last time he can do this. Probably Smithin will disappear after Chan takes him to the Namsen Hotel tomorrow. The protagonist agrees and asks the gangsters to bring a wheelchair. At this moment, Smithin is isolated in a hospital room. He gets nervous when he hears footsteps. On the other hand, Daru is surprised by the state of his former companion. He did not imagine that Chan could be so cruel. Smithin hears the voice of the newcomer and asks in French if it is Daru. The mercenary gets angry when he realizes that the man does not know how to speak Korean. The protagonist explains that it is because Smithin did not reincarnate like them, in which case Daru will have difficulty communicating with the man. Chan decides to do the translation. Daru then insults Smithin in every way, but then says that he forgave what he did in the past, when they were mercenaries. The protagonist has a hard time translating this because he doesn't think it's fair that Smithin is forgiven, so he just says that he hopes the mercenary has remorse for what he did for the rest of his life. It's the least he can do for the members of the squad who died unjustly. Smithen compares the way Chan talks to his former captain and asks if he is the god of Blackfield. The protagonist asks if the mercenary forgot that he had performed like this before. It turns out that Smithen was confused at the time and thought he was hallucinating, or in the worst case it could be a plan by Charlene to test him. Chan is sure that Charlene doesn't know that Smithen was almost beaten until the end of his life after touching a finger to a 16-year-old girl. Only the god of Blackfield and Smithen knew about this event, which confirmed that the protagonist was indeed the captain. Smithen now wants to confirm Daeru's identity and asks Chan to ask what was the amount he borrowed. The mercenary clearly remembers that this idiot borrowed money 3 times just to play with women. That's 4 times if you include the time Smithen ran away with his wallet from his coat. The protagonist asks if Smithen remembers when he stole Daeru's wallet. Now the mercenary has no way to escape reality. His companions have really been reborn and taken on new bodies. The protagonist understands that's something difficult to accept at first. Anyway, he decides to warn what the next events will be. Smithen is informed that tomorrow will be delivered to Charlene. The protagonist does not intend to talk about the password, he just wants the mercenary to return to France and never appear again. Smithen interrupts him to ask for a cigarette. Chan asks if he should do it and Daeru agrees. So he lights the cigarette in the man's mouth and feels that the situation is very humiliating, since he is helping a traitor subordinate. Smithen says that the Korean cigarettes is very good. The protagonist just tells him to smoke in silence. At that moment, the mercenary confesses that he knows the Charlene's password. Chan is taken by surprise and asks if he is serious. Smithen says that he has some shares of Gongt in his name. Half came from the money he earned from the sale of the diamond, and the other half came from the gang. He is almost sure that he will not live long if he returns to France. Therefore, the mercenary makes a proposal to the protagonist. He wants to tell the password in exchange for protection. It is difficult for Chan to accept the offer to protect a traitor. In addition, he does not want to touch the money that Smithen earned by sacrificing the lives of his comrades. The mercenary warns that there are 10 members of the Chinese and Japanese mafia in 2 places. At the hotel in front of the city hall and the Banpo Hotel, he will probably intervene when the protagonist delivers him tomorrow, so Smithen needs the protection. Chan understands that he will have a hard time dealing with Charlene and his gang. Smithen adds that Charlene must have already distributed the narcotics to Japan and China. They won't stand still when they find out how Chan spoiled their plans. Even so, the protagonist thinks he can't help Smithen because he can't live in Korea forever. The mercenary believes that the solution is to make him the manager of the Korean branch of Gongt. Chan summarizes what just happened to Daeru. He thinks Smithen has gone crazy for good. Daeru doesn't believe that the man really knows the password, because he is too stupid to fool Charlene. Even so, he suggests listening to him. If what Smithen is talking about is really true, then they just need to defeat the Chinese and Japanese before dawn, then finish off Charlene. The protagonist praises this idea and says that he is smart. Daeru asks if Chan can appoint Smithen as the manager of the Korean branch. He thinks that the best option would be to turn the mercenary into an English and French teacher. It's not hard to do that. They can do some documents and keep him in a school as a native language teacher. The protagonist says they can think about it later. He wants to find out how an idiot managed to fool Charlene. At that moment, Smithen says that the password is God of Blackfield. It was a very big surprise for the protagonist. Clearly, Charlene did it as a form of humiliation. Chan decides to put the thought aside and asks how the mercenary found out about the password. Smithen says that once Charlene told him to call the bank because he had requested a withdrawal. Usually Smithen said the phrase Smithen of Africa before saying the numbers, but that day he got confused and said God of Blackfield. So the voice on the other end of the line asked the mercenary to say the second password. Smithen gave them his password and was shocked when he realized that he got the first password right by accident. The protagonist couldn't imagine that Charlene would create such a fragile password. Smithen knows that the captain may doubt him, so he suggests that the god of Blackfield try this password, and if he is wrong, he can put an end to him. The protagonist says he will trust him because he doesn't see the reason for the man to lie. The mercenary decides to give some extra information. He is sure that Charlene trusts those Chinese and Japanese men to take care of him. That's why the protagonist should start by getting rid of them. Suddenly, Smithen gets agitated and says he won't live long if he returns to France. That poisonous snake gang will finish him off. Really, the mercenary's situation is delicate. Charlene doesn't know that he figured out the password, but even so he got greedy and decided to buy Gongte shares using the gang's money in his name. Smithen assumes that Charlene will take him to France and use the money in the account to settle things with the gang. After that, Smithen will no longer be of use and will be discarded. He calls the protagonist captain and begs for protection. Chan sums up the man's words to his friend. Basically, the mercenary is asking them to finish off Charlene. Daeru is eager to know the captain's decision, but the protagonist lets his friend choose what he wants to do. Since he almost died for the second time at Smithen's hand, Dyer decides to help the mercenary. Chan asks if the guy is sure and he replies yes, in which case the protagonist joins Guang's gangsters and asks to speak to the boss. The subordinate agrees and calls the man. Meanwhile, Chan removes Dyeru from the room. The phone is passed to the protagonist and Guang asks what happened. The boy tells him that in the hotel in front of the city hall, in the Bampo Hotel, there are 10 Chinese men and 10 Japanese men in each. They are the ones who buy the narcotics. Guang yells that these damned ones seem to be getting involved globally. He is curious to know the name of the organization, but the protagonist hasn't figured it out yet. The head of the criminal organization says it's okay, because his men will take care of it. The god of Blackfield just asks the man to get a room at the Namsan Hotel tomorrow. Guang replies that he will leave Dosake to solve it, so he should contact him later by the same phone number. The protagonist thanks him and the call ends. A few hours later, Chan receives a visit from Guang. The man didn't think his new friends would be so bad. The protagonist replies that it's not that bad and asks what he came to do in the hospital. The head of the criminal organization informs him that he found the aliens and is about to attack. Chan doesn't seem to care, which makes Guang curious, and he asks if the boy won't join them. The protagonist accuses the man of hesitating, but the head of the criminal organization says that he thought the boy wanted to go too. Chan asks if Guang thinks he will obey all his orders just because he emptied the club and helped with some small things. The man is offended by the words, yet he decides to explain that he didn't come here ask the protagonist to fight. In fact, he just wanted a person who would testify the incident. Guang is annoyed to realize that the student brat thought he was useful. Chan says that he just wants to end the conversation as soon as possible. After that, he never wants to cross Guang's path again. The head of the criminal organization can't believe what he's hearing. Anyway, the man says that with this incident, the debt with Chan regarding the domination in Gangnam is settled, so they have no more business together. The protagonist agrees and asks him to get his men out of the hospital. Guang yells that he is an idiot. The gangsters were not left here because of him, but because this hospital is vital to the organization. So he advises Chan to stop giving orders. Guang leaves after the end of the partnership. Daeru didn't expect his friend to act that way. He asks if there is any reason. The protagonist replies that they are not gangsters like Guang. Anyway, the head of the organization will end up with the Chinese and Japanese, so they can face Charlene. He just doesn't want to be indebted to Guang. Daeru agrees with the captain and the protagonist tells him to rest. The next day, Daeru wakes up sleepy and hears a voice saying that something is wrong. The friend worries that the protagonist's injuries have actually worsened. The god of Blackfield is celebrating because he feels better. He doesn't know what happened, but suddenly his body has improved. Chan is surprised that all this has happened in just one day. Daeru controls the bed to be more comfortable and says that it is admirable. It is not stranger than being reborn in someone else's body and in another country. He doesn't doubt anything else in this life. The protagonist is happy with his rapid recovery and calls his father asking for the ambulance. Kang has some questions about it, but the son lets it be clear that he will not be able to answer sincerely. Even so, the father decides to help him, and the call ends. The protagonist puts on the jacket and then says goodbye to his friend. Dyer worries if he will be okay. The god of Blackfield just replies that it is better than walking with a man with an injured neck by his side. They say goodbye and Daeru hopes to receive good news in the future. A few minutes later, Chan and Smithen get into the ambulance. The mercenary asks if it's just the two of them who are going. The protagonist asks why. Is a battle-savvy guy like him scared? Smithen replies that he has never entered a battlefield with a body in this state. Chan says that he doesn't need to worry because everything will go as planned. The ambulance makes it to the Namsan Hotel. In a few minutes, the driver stops in the parking lot, and the protagonist leaves with Smithen in a wheelchair. The mercenary still has bandages on his eye and can't see anything. The butler comes towards them and confirms the identity of the two. Then he helps take Smithen through the freight elevator and hands over the room card. The protagonist enters the room at the end of the hallway. He realizes that it is already 9 o'clock, so he asks to contact Charlene. The call between the two begins and the protagonist says that his room number is 1701. Charlene fears that it is an ambush. Chan assures that he will not do it because the contract is vital to him. The contract must be signed by 10 o'clock, and as soon as the lawyer confirms that there is no problem, Smithen will be delivered. Charlene asks what will the protagonist do if Smithen disappears during the meeting. Chan has no way to guarantee this, in which case the chief mercenary suggests taking another man with him to watch Smithen. While the two sign the contract, the protagonist accepts the condition. 10 minutes later, Charlene enters room 1701 with his subordinate. He is surprised to see Smithen's physical state and asks what happened. Chan replies that he thinks it's a light punishment considering that he betrayed his comrades. Charlene says that the guy is crossing the line. He even considers taking Smithen out of the room. The protagonist makes it clear that this won't happen. He adds that there are some gangsters in the hotel. Charlene just tells the subordinate to get ready. The man obeys, takes a long-barreled gun from his suit. Before taking the contract, Charlene asks where his 3 men are. The protagonist says he will release it after everything is right. The mercenary leaves the room, saying he will take the contract. Chan asks permission to sit on the couch, and the subordinate says it's okay. For now, everything is going according to plan. After a few minutes, he receives a call. Dosi informs him that the contract has been signed. The lawyer has already checked and Charlene is returning to the room. The protagonist hangs up the call. Smithen asks him to take off one of the bandages that is covering his good eye. He wants to watch the scene that is about to happen. Chan reluctantly obeys. Charlene finally returns to the room while one of his men watches the door. He says that he has already signed the contract. Now the boy has to fulfill the second part of the agreement. Charlene hates to say it, but the man in front of him really looks like the god of Blackfield. The protagonist smiles hearing this, which makes the man angry because he remembers that he hated that smile during his times as a mercenary in Africa. Chan asks if the previous Blackfield broke his pride. He didn't think it was more important than the lives of his soldiers. Charlene laughs and says that the idiot Smithen seems to have talked too much. The protagonist asks again if he was more important than the lives of the other mercenaries. After all, the man almost confessed that he planned all that because the god of Blackfield hurt his pride. Charlene asks if Chan plans to do something out of the agreed. He says that he knows the brat's mother. The protagonist imagined that the guy would try to threaten his family. Then he says that it seems that Charlene didn't notice something while they were talking yesterday. At that moment, the protagonist asks the men to come in. Charlene meets the 2 Chinese newcomers. Smithen soon asks if he hasn't realized that he has fallen into the trap of the god of Blackfield. Charlene couldn't believe it. The protagonist says that he was too stupid to choose such an easy password. Thanks to this, his life will not last long. Charlene realizes that his #1 enemy has discovered his bank password, so he assumes that all the money was sent to France. Chan replies that it was the price of the shares that Smithen had. A small bonus was also added for the price of Charlene's head. The protagonist had no idea that it cost 7 million euros. Charlene tries to understand how the brat managed to steal from his allies. Chan says that he called them yesterday when they received a request from France. They asked to let them continue their business, but that they would not distribute them in Korea. The protagonist agreed to the request, which means that there is no one by Charlene's side now. However, Chief Mercenary reminds you that there are many security cameras in this hotel. It will be troublesome when they find out that a foreign guest has disappeared. Chan says that the guy is stupid for trusting the law. Even so, he gives him 2 options. The first, Charlene can surrender immediately and beg to be eliminated without suffering. The second option is to fight a one-on-one battle with him. The man is surprised. The protagonist says they can handle it the same way they did when they were mercenaries. Charlene asks if he really is the god of Blackfield, but Chan is tired of trying to convince him. He just wants to fight. Charlene asks if someone will intervene if he wins. The protagonist says no. In this case, the mercenary boss chooses the second option. The 2 take off their coats to gain mobility and take their daggers. The handshake seals the beginning of the battle. The duel begins and Charlene says that if he is the real Chan, then he must remember the day he couldn't dodge the bullet. Suddenly, the protagonist is attacked and the blade passes close to his neck. It was just short of a fatal blow. It will definitely not be easy to deal with the boss. The 2 exchange punches, attacks him in exaggerated and intense, but so far no one has been hurt. The protagonist takes the opportunity to ask if it was also Charlene who shot Daeru. Chief Mercenary replies that with the exception of Smithen, who was the first to be hit, all the other mercenaries were eliminated by Charlene. He assumed that he was responsible and did not regret it. Chan awakens the killing intent and attacks harder, but the attack is blocked. In addition, Charlene finds an opening in his defense. In the next moment, Chan's shoulder receives a cut. Charlene admits that he is happy to have the chance to finish him off. For the second time, the protagonist remains fighting, even with his injured shoulder. It is a fact that the mercenary boss has the upper hand. Chan did not recover in time for the fight, and Smithen regrets that Charlene is in his best shape. In addition, the god of Blackfield is not the same as in the past. Smithen does not understand why he suggested a one-on-one battle. At that moment, the protagonist was already injured with both shoulders. He imagined that he only needs one blow to win, but before he had a chance to realize it, Charlene aimed the blade at his face. Everyone saw red liquid fall to the ground. A smile appeared on the boss's face, and he asked if he should end the fight. Charlene pulled Chan and aimed at his head. At that moment, the protagonist found the perfect opportunity. The boss realizes that the brat's dagger is going towards his arm. He tries to perform an attack first, but fails. Chan hit his rib, then pulled the dagger towards the ground. Charlene couldn't remain standing after a bloodthirsty attack. He loses his strength and falls to the ground. Apparently, everyone in the room was happy with the result. Even the subordinate who Charlene thought was by his side. Chan said that they could continue this fight in hell. The Chinese allies tried to take the body before anyone realized that something was wrong. They started cleaning. While the protagonist thought about what he did, he sat on the couch and looked coldly at the dagger. The subordinate approaches and warns that the boss wants to talk to him. On the other end of the line, the Frenchman thanked him for getting rid of this useless man. The protagonist replied that he had no problem, but made it clear that he wanted the drugs away from South Korea. The man replied that he didn't need to worry, then asked the name of his savior. The protagonist introduces himself as the god of Blackfield. The Frenchman said that if he needed something, he just had to identify with that name. After these words, the call came to an end. The protagonist asked why the men wanted to keep Charlin's body. The answer is that the head of the mercenaries was once their ally, so they need to protect the man's honor. At that moment, the Chinese man approaches and says something, but the protagonist doesn't understand. The subordinate translates by saying that the man praised his fight. The truth is that the god of Blackfield is not sure if he could do it again. The subordinate seems to translate the sentence. The Chinese man waves with a big smile. Chan asks if the subordinate really translated the correct sentence. He confirms and soon after says it's time to go. Charlin's body is taken and the gangsters say goodbye. Smithen praises the captain for the victory. They also leave the hotel, Dusek already waiting in the parking lot. He praised the protagonist and handed over a new phone. The man said that this was Chief Guang's last gift. The number is the same as his old cell phone, it's just compensation for the protagonist having dealt with the Japanese and Chinese. Dosok adds that his boss intends to go to school if the boy doesn't accept the gift. Chen laughs and accepts the gift. He asks Doseok not to act like he knows him the next time they meet. After that, Smithen and Chan get into the ambulance. The mercenary wonders how he will live from now on. Chan says that they spent 7 million of the shares to put the gangsters on their side, so Smithen must have 3 million euros left. But the mercenary thinks it's better for the captain to take this money and share it with Daeru. He has at least 12 million euros in shares and will be manager of the Gongt branch, so his salary will be very high. The protagonist makes it clear that he will not accept this money. Smithen just wanted to reward him for his work, but he assured him that he would manage it himself. Smithen comments that he is not sure if he will be able to live in Korea. The protagonist replies that he can go away somewhere with beautiful girls, but Smithen thinks it's safer to stay by Daeru and Chan's side. The scene changes to the hospital. The protagonist is scolded by Dr. Hyun. The man didn't know how he could have a patient who gets hurt so many times a day. Chan could already be a VIP patient. He asks Hyun to buy more clothes like the ones he gave. The doctor replies that he is in the hospital and not at the mall. Even so, he agrees to help. The protagonist visited his friend and told him what happened at the Namsan Hotel. Daeru was excited and said he wanted to be there to see it. Chan admits that it wasn't as nice as he imagined. Daeru changes the subject and says that he heard that he manipulated the Japanese and Chinese, not to mention the French. Chan replies that he did it because he knew that Charlin was going to ask them for help. Daeru comments that his captain's brain is better than before. The protagonist remembers to talk about the money Smithen offered them, 3 billion euros. Daeru shouts in surprise that this is 4 billion won. He doesn't think twice and says that he will use a part to pay for the hospital. The protagonist agrees and replies that they can think about how they will spend the rest later. Now Daeru is curious to know if the captain will live as a mercenary that he has always been or accept that he is a high school student. Chan has not yet had the opportunity to think about it. He has managed to complete all the problems of his past life. There was the rematch with Charlin and Smithen, so there is no reason for the protagonist to put his life in danger again. All the disagreements are in the past. He really just wants to have a peaceful and happy life with his family, but the protagonist thinks he deserves it. He would not hesitate to return the current body to the previous owner. Maybe this will never happen. Sochin wonders if he can really treat Kang and Suk like his parents. At that moment, Daeru interrupts his thoughts. He was worried because the captain's face didn't look so nice. Chan replies that it's okay. They can talk about the future at another time. The friend agrees and says that his wife intends to visit him later. He wants the protagonist to meet her. Chan questions how the man intends to introduce him. Daeru says it's easy. He will say that Chan is his student. The protagonist thinks that this will not work because he is not an ordinary young man. At that moment, someone calls the room and warns that the clothes have already been bought. Chan says goodbye to his friend, saying that he will come back later. A few hours later, the protagonist returns home and realizes that Suk was waiting for him. The woman soon warns that everything went well at the Kang meeting. He even cried on the phone. Chan is happy with the news and warns that it was all thanks to his father. Even so, the mother hugs him and thanks him. The protagonist is happy with the affection and thinks about reciprocating, but he hesitates. He says he is tired and needs to go to his room. Suk agrees. The protagonist is alone and wonders what he should do. He feels that this is not his family. Anyway, the boy decides to think about it later. The next day, Chan wakes up and the cell phone shows that it is 6 a.m. He is surprised when he sees the amount of text messages. The first conversation has only the contact number. The protagonist assumes that it is Daeru and decides to call. The mercenary warns that the school preferred to remain with the sports club will be closed for a while. Since the supervising teacher is in the hospital, Chan is not happy at all, because now he will be forced to attend classes. Daeru knew that the brat would be reluctant, so he said that the protagonist was with him during the accident. He was not seriously injured, but Daeru asked them not to bother him too much. Chan thanks him mentally. Anyway, Daeru intends to return in 2 weeks, so Chan must hold out until then. The protagonist thanks him and gives him a good rest. So he checks the other messages, even though he has no name. Michelle's message is easily identified. He calls the woman and she asks if he is okay. The protagonist confirms that he is. The French woman is happy and is invited to dinner next week. The invitation was quickly accepted, so Chan said goodbye and hung up the call. The next message he sees is from Kim. She said she heard that he got hurt, and that's why she wanted to stop by his house. Chan also calls the girl and asks how she found out that he got hurt. Kim reminds him that she is the director of the sports club. Then he received the news. The protagonist replies that the teacher was seriously injured, but he is already fine. There is no reason for the girl to go visit him. At that moment, Kim says that she is already close to arriving at his house. She asked him to meet her at the bank near her house. Chan has no reason to refuse and went there. As soon as Kim saw him, she ran and tried to jump into his arms, but was rejected by the protagonist. He pushed her back. The girl was embarrassed and asked to see the injuries. Chan said several times that he was fine, and there was no way to worry, but Kim insisted to see some injuries. At that moment, she ends up holding his hand very tightly and looks deep into his eyes. The protagonist doesn't understand why the girl is acting like this. Suddenly, Kim stands on tiptoe to kiss him. Chan backs off, saying that it's better to go to a more open place. In the end, nothing romantic happened between them. The protagonist made up another lie about why he didn't go to class. Kim convinces him to go to school the next day. She heard that the teacher will be out for 2 weeks. This is worrying because it is the week of the exams. Chan is scared, asking if she is serious. Since he reincarnated, he has not taken any exams. On the other hand, Kim was looking forward to the exams. She is sure she will be in first place in the ranking. The protagonist does not understand why the girl is so happy, so a memory of the past comes to his mind. It turns out that our main character promised that he would kiss her if she got the first place for the best score in the tests. Now he is uncomfortable. Chan thinks about how he can get out of this situation. He says that it is already getting late, and it is better to go home. Kim agrees and says goodbye, but before she warns him that he must go to school. After that, the girl runs away. The protagonist observes her and says that at least she is motivated to study seriously. It's a relief. Monday arrives. Kang takes his son to school and asks if he already knows what he wants to do. The protagonist intends to enter college, despite not feeling very confident to take the exams. At that moment, an idea comes to his mind and he remembers that he likes sports a lot, so he can go to sports college and go to France. Kang says that Suk will be very happy, but he wants his son to promise that he won't get hurt from now on. The protagonist assures him that he won't get into trouble, so the father is relieved and can now support him. Later, the protagonist arrives at school, and the first person he meets is Insil. Their last meeting was not so pleasant. The girl seems to want to say something, but Chan avoids her and enters the classroom. All the students stare at him, as if he were a missing boy. The protagonist already imagined that this would happen. Suddenly, something catches his attention. Hojin's face was very hurt. It seems that the guy kept getting into trouble. It's not something Chan worries about. He sits at the table next to Kim and she's happy that he came to school. The protagonist realized that in that room, Kim was the only one who was smiling, probably because she was the only one who liked tasting. The teacher taught some important issues. Chan didn't understand anything and remained in his head. At that moment, a cell phone ring catches everyone's attention. The teacher tries to concentrate to explain his subject, but it's clear that he's bothered. Kim warns the protagonist that his phone is ringing. It's a text message from Daeru saying that Smithan is asking for Chan's account number to give to the shares. The man adds that that idiot asked a nurse to translate for him, so his wife ended up hearing about the shares and is going crazy about it. That's why Daeru is asking for help for the protagonist to solve this situation. Chan sends a text message saying he's in class. Before Daeru answers, he silences all notifications. Suddenly, a message sent by the number 00000 catches his attention. Someone says this is just the beginning. The protagonist thinks it's not something he should worry about. Then he leaves his cell phone on the side and turns his attention to the class. The lunch break arrives. Kim and Chan take advantage of the moment to talk to the sports club. The protagonist said that the club will temporarily stop all activities until the teacher is discharged. There will be no official training, but it is important that everyone continues to work on endurance. Apparently, the students do not mind not practicing physical activities. Later, the class comes to an end and the students are released to return home. The protagonist is bothered because Kim is always following him. At least they will follow a different path in a few minutes. That's what the protagonist thought. But then Kim invites him to study together. The boy immediately refuses. Kim lowers his head depressed. The protagonist realizes that he was very rude and says that it is because he needs to visit the teacher. In this case, the girl decides that she will accompany him. Chan tries to make her give it up and says that she better study. However, Kim believes that as the manager of the sports group, it is her duty to visit the teacher. The protagonist mentally apologizes to Daeru for having to do this. He tells the girl that he can't visit the mentor because the man was hit in a delicate area that no girl should see, after which Chan says goodbye and leaves her alone. The scene changes to the hospital. The protagonist asks how the teacher's recovery is going. The man replies that it's only been a day, so it's the same way as before. Chan goes straight to the point and asks where his wife is. Daeru replies that she went home to take care of their son, but she will be back tomorrow. His real concern is Smithen. Daeru is sure that the mercenary is planning something. By the way, now the two share the same room. The protagonist doesn't know how it happened. Daeru replies that the crazy idiot kept saying he was bored and afraid, so he asked to stay with him. Although they can't communicate, the protagonist is the only one who can talk to the man in French. He remembers that Smithen gave 3 million to divide between him and the professor, but it doesn't make sense that the man is now also giving up his own shares in the company. Smithen justifies himself by saying that he has 3 million in his account and 12 million in shares, which is about 15 million. So there will be no problem with each one getting 15 million. Daeru and Chan don't trust the man. The mercenary explains that he didn't have such a good experience after his comrades passed away. Even so, he asks his comrades to accept this opportunity to forgive him. The man just wants to be accepted again among his friends. Smithen adds that he will find a way to send the money even if they don't want to. The protagonist translates it to Daeru, who gets angry because he is sure that the mercenary is planning something. Chan has the same thought, then questions if the guy is hiding something. Smithen says he has told everything, but the protagonist does not believe it and says that it is the last chance for him to say what he is hiding. Smithen finally admits that he has a bad feeling that there was someone in the shadows, Charlene, but he has no idea who it is or how influential that person is. The protagonist informs Daeru that Sierra is afraid of the Charlene supporters. This money is to convince them to protect him. Daeru already knew that the mercenary wanted to take advantage of them. The man quickly explains that this money will be good for everyone. He just wants to be part of his friends group again. Chan calmly says that this decision is not up to him. He mentioned last time that the right to decide on anything related to Smithen, it's Daeru, so the protagonist waits for his friend to tell him what he wants to do. Smithen gives a smile and Daeru agrees to help, even though he hates Smithen. Chan informs the mercenary that they are together again. Smithen calls him captain and thanks him. He also thanks Daeru, then remembers that he has one more request. The protagonist prepared to hear something stupid and said he could break his legs at any time. The mercenary just wanted to ask for a personal Korean tutor and a place to live when he is discharged. After all, it is his first time in Korea. The protagonist laughs and calls him shameless. He thinks he can find someone through Michelle. Her friend named Cecile works in a security company. It may also be worth asking her about this case of the shares. It would be to eliminate 2 birds with a single blow. At that moment, Daeru interrupts the protagonist's thoughts and shows the text message he received from an unknown number. Chan says he received the same thing earlier. The two check if it is the same number and are surprised. It is suspicious to receive something like this after what happened to Charlene. Anyway, the protagonist says no matter who it is, it's useless if all they do is bark, and if they get close they will be defeated. Daeru supports his friend and says that's how they should act. The protagonist realizes it's getting late and says goodbye. Smithen asks Chan to stay a little longer because he and Daeru are easy assets. Chan replies that his parents told him to come home early. Smithen is surprised by the attitude and has doubts if he is really the captain. The protagonist replies that he can prove it by beating him, in which case Smithen prefers to agree with him. Later that day, the protagonist calls Michelle and apologizes for waking her up. The French woman replies that it's okay, then asks why he's calling. For a moment, the woman thought she would be called out on a date, but Chan said he had a request. He explained that the manager of the Korean branch of Gonk Motors was hospitalized and is looking for a private tutor who can teach him Korean. The protagonist wanted to know if she can recommend someone she knows, maybe Cindy. Michelle replied that Cindy was a little busy lately, but she has another friend who can help with that. She asks if the protagonist wants to meet her. Chan answers yes and soon asks about Cecile. He remembers that the girl said she worked with security and finances. Michelle complains that he called her and only talks about her friends. It's unfair. The protagonist replies that it could be worse. He could call her friends directly. In this case, Michelle prefers that he only talk to her. The protagonist tells the details of why he needs Cecil. There is a large amount of money that needs to be divided among some people. Then he asks for help with the process. Michelle replies that it is better to talk about the details with Cecile. Then she will set up a meeting. After saying that, Michelle warns that she misses Chan, but he just hangs up the call. The protagonist feels that all women are annoying. He even compares Michelle and Kim. The scene changes to a popular restaurant where Chan had dinner with her parents. He commented that she was not used to eating that kind of dish. Her father said that in the business world, it is normal for him to eat different things. Most of the meetings are held in restaurants, so he needs to get used to it. Suk says that this place is nostalgic. The protagonist asks why she is saying this. The mother asks if he doesn't remember that they were poor before his father's company. The woman feels bad for thinking that the protagonist still hasn't recovered all his memories. Chan lies, saying he remembers all this. In fact, he only forgot for a moment. Suk knows he's lying, but prefers not to bring it up. Chan watches his parents having fun and is happy. Kang mentions there will be a presentation this weekend for the inauguration of the new manager of the Korean branch. The French ambassador to South Korea will also be present. He would like Chan and Suk to accompany him. The protagonist says he will be there. 1 week later, Cecile explained how the process would be for Smithen's money to be divided into 3 accounts. The protagonist was exhausted just listening to it, but he felt that Cecile's plan could be illegal. She replied that a clever trick would be a better term. Cecile reassures him by saying that he will do all the complicated processes, so all he has to do now is create an account and sign the document. The protagonist left Cecile fully responsible for the distribution process. A few days later, he received 1.5 billion won as part of the money that was divided, along with the money he earned during his days working as a mercenary, totaling 230 million won. Now he had more than 1.7 billion won in the account. It was impressive to see that much money. The next step was to introduce teacher Alice to Smithen. The man's eyes lit up in love, and he made it clear that he wanted his own personal room starting tomorrow. The protagonist calls him an idiot. Smithen defends himself by saying that he just doesn't want to bother Daeru. Chan translates the conversation to the teacher, who threatens to finish off Smithen. The mercenary says that it is not what they are thinking. In the end, the protagonist found a competent teacher, and Smithen was officially appointed manager of the Korean branch. At first, Chin worried that the headquarters in France could cause us problems with the disappearance of Charlene, but they did nothing. Maybe it is because of the influence of the poisonous snake in France. 1 week later, a conference takes place at the Hotel Lots. The protagonist was there to accompany his parents. Someone was watching him. It was a tall French man. Soon the attention of Chan is directed to Smithen. The mercenary entered the salon with the help of Alice. The protagonist forces a smile while asking the guy not to act like they know each other. The two talk in French. Smithen doesn't think he should lie because they all saw him together at the Namsen Hotel. He asks Alice not to mind the conversation. Chan questions why they seem so intimate. Smithen just turns to Kang and Alice translates his words. The mercenary says he's happy to work with him and asks if the man wants to know the reason for his injuries. Chan gets angry because he thinks Smithen is talking too much. The mercenary also greets Suk. The protagonist threatens to finish him off if he is not respectful. Smithen only greets her. At that moment, the Frenchman who was eyeing the protagonist approaches the mercenary. Smithen was surprised by the appearance of the French ambassador. The protagonist also did not expect to meet someone powerful so soon. The ambassador introduces himself as Renork and waits for a handshake. Chan touches his hand and introduces himself as well. He thinks this newcomer seems to have some interest in him, so he told his mother who he was. Suk was shocked, asking why the ambassador shook his son's hand. The protagonist just said that the man greeted, "It's no big deal." At this point, Renork asks if they can have a conversation. Chan says yes and asks the man to talk, but the Frenchman replies that it needs to be somewhere else. The main character is suspicious of the request, but accepts because he doesn't want to make his parents worried. Renork invites him to a hotel restaurant and asks how he learned French. Chan makes it clear that he thinks it's a stupid question, but replies that he learned it on the internet. The man drinks tea and says that Chan seems quite proficient in information technology. Anyway, he didn't ask for his time to these meaningless questions. Renork wanted to talk a little about Charlene. The protagonist listens to everything in silence. The man says that Gonkt is a company that represents French automakers. It would be quite problematic if the world found out that the company was dealing with a criminal organization and selling narcotics. Therefore, Renork, as a representative of France, would like to express his gratitude for detaining Charlene. Chan sincerely replies that he did not act on behalf of the French government. Renork only says that all information related to Charlene has been processed by the French intelligence agencies, so it is important that no rumors in bad taste start to circulate. The protagonist says he understands. It is an indirect way of telling him not to leak information. Renork adds that they will treat what happened to Charlene as an unfortunate accident that happened on the way to the airport. As a way of thanking, the man wishes to give Chan the opportunity to enter any university in French territory as a scholarship holder. The protagonist replies that he will think calmly. Renork then talks about the money involving the actions. He took care of everything so that Chan would worry about the Korean Internal Revenue Service. In addition, France will give him a certain amount of shares, so the boy doesn't have to worry about money for the rest of his life. The protagonist didn't expect the man to know about everything about his life. Anyway, he thinks the compensation is overkill. Renork replies that next year the French presidential elections take place, so Chan can think of it as compensation for not interfering in the elections. Renork hands over his personal card and says that the protagonist can contact him if he needs anything. At this point, Chan asks a question that makes the thinker thoughtful. He questions if he can have access to the records of dispatches from French mercenaries. Renork says that if it's something related to Charlene, it would be wise to just forget about the man. In fact, the protagonist wanted to find information about himself, but preferred not to insist and said goodbye to the ambassador. Before he left, Renork uses a threatening tone to say that if any strange rumors spread, France's intelligence agencies will have to take care of things. Chan teases him by saying that he is in South Korea. Renork laughs forcefully and apologizes, but it was something he needed to talk about. The protagonist goes back to his parents quickly. Suk asks what the conversation was. Chan told him about the scholarship he wanted to study in France. His mother is impressed and he changes the subject, asking where Smithen is. Suk points to the stage. Smithen was presenting the newest car model that Gongt has dedicated several years to develop. The protagonist is surprised by the man's speech. He has never spoken as well as now. The new luxury sedan, the Femme 5, appears on stage. At that moment, the protagonist does some notice familiar. Michelle is among the audience with a team of photographers. The woman seems quite focused on capturing the best angles, but she is so beautiful that she stole the spotlight from the models. Chan decides to greet her, but regretted it the next moment. Michelle ran into her arms in front of everyone. Then she kissed her mouth. Chan was completely uncomfortable and asked the woman to calm down. Michelle decided to greet his parents. Suk didn't remember her. The protagonist tells his mother that they already met at the French restaurant last time. He justified the kiss scene by saying that the French overreact to everything. Then the protagonist asked what Michelle was doing there. She replies that she works with magazine articles. Next month, a special edition of Gongt Motors will come out. The woman is curious to know who the man next to her is. Chan introduces her father as the owner of Kang Motors. Michelle praises Kang, then invites Chan to have a drink. The insistence reminds him of Kim, but the protagonist does not refuse, because he remembers that Michelle helped him a lot. At that moment, Renork passes by the two and salutes with her head. Michelle asks, surprised, if Chan knows this man. He confirms that he does. The woman says that Renork is famous in France for his arrogance. It seems that he is aiming for the next presidential elections. He is not the type of person who has the luxury of greeting others. The protagonist changes the subject and asks if she has given up drinking. He warns his parents that he will go out for a few moments. Suk doesn't think it's good for him to go out alone with Michelle, but the protagonist says he owes her some things. Kang advises him not to take too long. The scene changes to the hotel bar. Michelle chose alcoholic beverage, while Chan preferred soda. The woman asks why he always pushes her away. The protagonist says he doesn't do that. Michelle is not an idiot and has already realized that he always backs off when she tries to close the distance between the two. Chan replies that he wants nothing to do with her. They may be friends, but nothing more than that. Michelle asks if the problem is that she is French. He is also willing to stop going out with other men to be with him. The protagonist says that this is not the problem. He just doesn't want to be with anyone. Michelle asks if Chan is really a high school student. The protagonist ignores the question, so she says that in this case she will not be close to him the whole time, but asks the boy not to push her away. Suddenly the two are interrupted by a female voice. Michelle greets her friend Soyeon, then introduces Chan to the girl. The protagonist thinks Soyeon looks like one of the models from before. Michelle confirms that her friend works as a model and asks if he hasn't seen her on television. Chan says no. Michelle jokes that Soyeon needs to improve marketing. The protagonist takes advantage of the moment to leave. Soyeon thinks he got in the way of the couple and apologizes, but Chan says he was already going. He pays for the drinks and goes back to the salon. Later that night, Chan decides to do his night training. He can't forget the fact that Charlene was strong, but lost the upper hand after leaving the battlefield and doing administrative and managerial work. That's why he couldn't live the long life he wanted. The protagonist promises himself that he will never meet the same end as Charlene. He remembers the sudden feeling as if he was back in his previous body during the battle against the parking lot group. At first, Chan thought it was a coincidence or an adrenaline rush, but then he had the same feeling during the fight with Smithin. So he concludes that it happens whenever his life is at risk. It's as if his past sensations have awakened again. It would have been impossible to defeat Charlene without these senses. So the protagonist believes that if he makes his body go through extreme torment, his past senses will be completely restored. A memory of the past invades his mind. One day, a mercenary from the French squadron had a nightmare. Smithin and Day are worried. The protagonist imagined that this was happening because it was the first time the man fought on a battlefield. Smithin agrees that everyone has nightmares the night after the first battle, but this mercenary was strange. He apologizes whenever he uses a weapon. The protagonist dealt with it the next day as a captain. He made the rookie try his best in training. The goal was to balance his stamina. The recruit struggles. Chan tries to stop him by saying that he is at the limit, but the mercenary replies that he will do what the captain ordered. He didn't give up and completed all the turns. Chan praised his determination. Then one day, the French squadron entered combat with an enemy squadron. Daru fought alongside the captain. He suggested retreating because the enemies were at an advantage, but the protagonist thought it best to wait for the air reinforcement. Suddenly, he realizes that the rookie was injured. Daru tries to stop him from going because the bombing is too dangerous. Chan doesn't care and goes to the rookie, but when he arrives, he realizes that it is too late. Back to the present moment, the protagonist says to himself who has to regain his strength. He trained so intensely that he did not realize that the day dawned. To make matters worse, the students were going to school. Chan puts on the uniform and goes to school too. Kim meets him on the way. She says it's a coincidence to meet him, but the protagonist knows that the girl waited for him. At that moment, Daru stops next to the students and says he can take them to school. The two get in the car and Kim asks how the teacher is. Daru replies that he almost broke his entire body, but the doctors managed to fix it right. Until his recovery was quick, Kim is shocked to hear Daru say that the doctors managed to fix something in his body faster than expected. The man was referring to the neck, but Kim mistook it for another limb. The protagonist changes the subject so Daru doesn't realize that he made up a lie to Kim. Chan says that he is looking forward to the sports group getting back up and running. Daru says that he will have a meeting about it because of the exams, but it won't be long before the club is opened again. Kim says that she will be the student with the highest score in the exams. Daru is sure of it. There is no one smarter than the girl in school. The man also remembers that the protagonist has already had a birthday, so he advises you to try to get a driver's license. After all, you never know when you will need a car. Suddenly, a notification arrives on Kim's cell phone, and she looks uncomfortable. The girl has received this message several times and is afraid of being a stalker. Chan asks to take a look and picks up the phone. He then sees the same message he and Daru received. The number is the same, and the message says that Kim will pass away soon. The threat makes the protagonist worried because Kim has nothing to do with Charlene. He questioned if the girl received it again. She says she received the first one yesterday, but deleted it because she was afraid. The protagonist realizes that he needs to talk to Daru about the messages. At the end of the afternoon, the students of the sports group gather. Daru confirms if the second-year students have a summer camp during the holidays. Kim says that it will be 4 days. Daru informs that he is one of the teachers who will accompany them. The students are released after the information. Kim stays in the room because he wants to know what Daru and Chan want to talk about. The protagonist lies, saying that the conversation is about the accident. Kim reluctantly leaves. Chan soon tells the mercenary that the message the girl received is proof that everyone around him is at risk, so he thinks it's best to check Smithin. Daru supports him. The protagonist then questions what summer camp this is. He didn't hear about it during classes. The mercenary replies that the second-year students couldn't go on an excursion this year, so the teachers chose to go camp. Chan asks if Daru can't jump using his injury as an excuse. The mentor is sure that being away for so long is not a good idea in this situation. If he is not, the head teacher of physical education will have to go. The problem is that the man is doing 60th birthday. It will be unpleasant if a young teacher pushes work to a veteran teacher who is celebrating his 60th birthday. Daru wants to avoid any bad rumors about him. Chan understands the situation. In that case, he will solve the situation himself. Later, the protagonist passes by his mother and wonders if she received any messages. He lies to get any information from the woman. Chan says that apparently it is a trend to send threatening messages to random people nowadays. Suk says that this trend is bizarre, but she deleted the message she received. The protagonist says that it will go out for a while. At that moment, he confirmed that everyone around him is being threatened. The problem is that he can't protect everyone at the same time. After taking an app car, Chan arrives at Smithin's new address. The mercenary looks better since the last meeting. The protagonist is direct and says who didn't come to play. Smithin asks Alice to leave them alone. Chan starts by saying that he had talked about it in the hospital before, but Smithin must not know because he doesn't speak Korean. It turns out that he and Daru are receiving threats. Everyone around them too. Smithin is surprised and says he didn't receive any messages. He also doesn't know who would dare to do this. Hearing this makes the protagonist come to the conclusion that Smithen is not the target. He asks if the mercenary has any suspicions about who was supporting Charlene behind his back before. Smithen clarifies that he doesn't know anything. It was just a feeling. Chan loses his patience and says that if the mercenary keeps hiding things and plotting things, he will have to treat him the same way Smithen treats him. The protagonist adds that he should not mention Africa or mercenary work to anyone. A word from him can end up hurting dozens of people around them, including Smithen himself. The mercenary understands the subtle threat. The protagonist finishes by saying in an intimidating voice that if he knows Smithen told this to anyone, his fate will be the worst of all. After saying that, Chan prepares to leave. Smithen finally admits that he heard Charlene talking to someone on the phone. Chief Mercenary didn't know he was there, so Smithen was threatened the same way he is being now. After that, he saw him on a similar phone call several times, but he acted like he didn't know anything. The protagonist gets angry that he's really hiding something. Anyway, this information wasn't worth anything. He decides to leave and asks Smithen to call if something happens. On the way back home, the protagonist received a call from Daru. The teacher informed him that he tried to call the telephone exchange to track down the number, but they can only do this with a police warrant. Daru intends to go to the police station tomorrow. The protagonist thanks the man for doing so. Daru asks if he has ever seen Smithen. Chan says yes, and then tells what he found. The mercenary didn't know that Smithen still had secrets. Anyway, he thinks the poisonous serpent gang might be involved. The protagonist thinks this is not the gangster's style. If it was the case, Smithen should have been the first to receive the message. For now, it is good to be on alert. Daru agrees and hangs up. The protagonist knows that he needs to protect his family, so he decides to hire the best private security service. Chan is informed that the VIP security service is used in cases of serious occurrence or for clients who are being targeted for murder or kidnapping by various criminals. The protagonist replies that this is exactly the service he wants, no matter the price. The secretary replies that he will pass the call to the CEO in charge of the VIP security service. A man introduces himself as Kim Tae-jin and asks the two to meet tomorrow to talk more details about the work. Chan agrees and hangs up. There is certainly no way to protect everyone around him, but his family deserves this protection. At this moment, the protagonist receives a call from Gwang. The gangster quickly warns that they attacked Silk. Now he is in serious condition in the hospital. Gwang thinks that the remnants of the parking lot group are the ones behind it, but he is not sure. He only called to ask Chan to be careful. After all, he was the protagonist who defeated some men in the gang. He will probably be the first to be attacked by the group. Until that moment, Chan had forgotten about the first gang he faced when he was reborn. If the parking lot group is responsible for the messages, it makes sense that Smithen is excluded from the group of threatened people. The protagonist tries to know if Doseok will recover. Gwang says that he is in the operating room right now. Things like that are normal for gangsters, but this time they went too far. Gwang says that Doseok was completely crippled, and their abilities were not normal, so he doesn't think it's a work of usual gangsters. He is certainly an experienced professional assassin, so Gwang decided to send some of his men to protect the protagonist. This time, Chan does not refuse help and says that he received threatening text messages. Gwang is surprised, and Chan clarifies that several people around him received the same messages, including his high school teacher. The protagonist assumes that someone took the phone he lost at the hotel and used his contacts. This may be related to the incident with Doseok's injuries. After Chan told all the details, Gwang is sure that the parking lot gang is involved. He says he will solve it and hangs up. The protagonist is sorry for what happened to Doseok, but he can't help but feel relieved too. Now he has the help of a gang to solve his problem. Even so, the protagonist understands that it is important to stay alert because his enemy may be different from Gwang's enemy. The next day arrives. Chan was surprised to see that Daru spent money to buy equipment for the sports club. The mercenary says he had money to spare. In addition, the facilities were a little too run down to be called a sports club. Chan says that's good, then asks how the man is doing about the threatening messages. Daru says that he went to the police and an organization called Cyber Investigation investigated this incident, but the culprit used a program dedicated to sending messages from abroad, so nothing was resolved. Chan talks about Gwang's suspicion. Daru thinks it really might be a group from abroad. The Cyber Investigation group said it would take a while to catch them, but at least they won't receive any threat messages from now on. As soon as Daru finishes talking, a new threat message arrives. Daru assumes that the men used a new program, but that doesn't matter. He invites Chan to dinner, however the boy already has plans. The mercenary jokes asking if he will study for the exams. In fact, Chan has to find a person. After the end of classes, the protagonist makes an appointment at the coffee shop in the city center. Taejin quickly arrives and greets him. He introduces director Sang. Chan notes that Taejin's physique is different from those guys who only build muscles to have physical strength. He has mastered at least several martial arts. Taejin warns that he has already been informed about the situation. He knows that no one would spend that much because of some threatening messages, so he asks Chan to say any idea he has in mind. Even if they are silly, the protagonist is silent, so Taejin says that he knows a lot of confidential secrets. He doesn't have to worry. Chan finally confesses his suspicions. He thinks some gangsters and thugs are behind it, but it's not certain. Taejin says he can take some preventive measures if he knows what the group is. The protagonist replies that he only needs some guards to protect his family. Director Sang refers to Chan as a brat and says that he is getting it wrong. Not even the gangsters and thugs of the country can do anything against Taejin. Then he must say what the group is. The protagonist gets angry at being treated that way. Taejin realizes that he is not dealing with a normal high school student and asks Sang to be silent. He apologizes for what just happened. The protagonist just asks Taejin to find who is sending the threatening messages. The man says that he will be able to do this when he signs this document. It is a VIP protection service contract for the people that Chan mentioned. Taejin adds that the clients will not know that they are receiving this service. The protagonist signs the document and asks Taejin to be attentive. His teacher is very proud, and it is good that he does not know this. The deal is sealed and the protagonist leaves. Sang comments that the brat is too arrogant. Taejin seriously asks how many years ago has he been a director works in the organization. Sang says that 8 years ago. Taejin then asks if he didn't notice. The CEO had the feeling that Chan was an assassin. He has certainly eliminated countless people. Taejin compares him to the king without weapons when he was young. Director Sang was surprised by these words because Taejin didn't often make mistakes. Later that day, the protagonist was in his room wondering if the parking group is really responsible. They don't even have the necessary skills to bypass the cyber investigation team and send another threat message to Daeru. At that moment, his phone rings an unknown number, which catches Chan's attention as the number is made up of several zero. As the messages go, he decides to answer, and on the other end of the line, a voice speaks to him. Renork says that this is a number used exclusively by government officials to avoid recordings. Chan replies that he understands and asks what the ambassador wants. The man tries to set up a meeting at the same hotel they met, but the protagonist said he has proof the other day. Renork realizes that he will have to be direct. He warns that Charlene is alive. The protagonist hits his fist on the table in anger and says he will meet him at the hotel. In a few minutes, Chan arrives at the Lots Hotel. He says to avoid the formalities. Renork believes that Charlene is still in Korea. It seems that they were betrayed by those men from China. Chan wonders how the man could have survived. He is sure that he cut close to the heart. It would be difficult to save him, even if a doctor was waiting near the room they fought in. Renork also doesn't know how this happened, but the intelligence agency discovered a connection between Charlene and someone in France. Chan understands that anything is possible. After all, he and Dae are reincarnated in other people's bodies. The protagonist asks what Charlene said. Renork replies that the mercenary presented himself as Desert Ice and said that he had an enemy in South Korea that needed to be eliminated. The ambassador assures that all his men will be used to find out Charlene's whereabouts, his goals, and the person behind him. Renork thinks that this incident may be related to the upcoming presidential election in France. The protagonist does not identify the resemblance. The ambassador admits that he wants Chan to be attacked. So far, Charlene is hiding and completely erasing his tracks, but he will eventually appear to the protagonist. Chan gets annoyed hearing this. The truth is that Renork is thinking on his own side, so it's not strange to think that he could use the protagonist as bait. Renork says he has two options. The first is to completely erase Chan's existence. The main character tells him to try his luck. Renork then says that the second option is to unite and eliminate Charlene. Chan is thoughtful. The ambassador says he prefers the second option. In Korea, there is a limit to what his men can do. That's why he needs Chan. His plan is for the protagonist to create a company or take over an existing one. His intelligence agency will take care of the expenses. Renork adds that it is much easier to act as the president of a corporation than as a high school student. Moreover, if Charlene really is being supported by China, this incident will not only end with the end of the protagonist, they will probably go after his family and friends. Chan knows that the man is right and asks for a moment to think. The ambassador agrees, but makes it clear that the decision must be set as soon as possible. Chan gets up to leave. Renork says out loud that he needs French nationality, so they can unite and fight side by side. Chan replies disdainfully that it is too much generosity. He has the impression that Renork thinks that French nationality is superior to Korean. It is exactly this mentality that the protagonist hates, so he turns his back and leaves. Renork finds the boy's boldness interesting. Meanwhile, outside the hotel, Chan gets into a taxi. The driver asks for the address. The protagonist thinks that some crowded place is the best option. He wants to organize his thoughts in an area with many passersby, so he asks to drop him off at Tron Square. A few minutes later, Chan walks among the people aimlessly. Now that he has learned that Charlene is alive, there is a high chance that the threatening messages are related to him. Chan remembers that the Chinese talked nonsense about pride and honor, only to be bribed with more money. Deep down, the protagonist blames himself for leaving other people in charge of cleaning. Another thing that makes Chan angry is this story about the French presidential election and obtaining nationality. He just wants to finish off Charlene and live in peace, so the protagonist expects the man to actually come to him. At that moment, a specific sound catches his attention. It sounds like a group of people beating up a smaller group of people. The protagonist goes towards the sound and realizes that he was right. The victims are Unzil and Hojun. It is a fight between students. The protagonist's classmates take the worst. One of the delinquents unzips his pants and Chan decides to interfere. Hojun is surprised, the delinquent saying not to get involved. The protagonist knocks the first one down with an attack on the chin, while the minions fall. The delinquent still tries to unzip his pants. He is the only one who is still standing, but it doesn't take long to be defeated. The guy threatens him, saying that he will bring his men. Chan knows that he will not have time to deal with new delinquents, so he decides to finish off this guy. He steps on the student's hand and kicks his mouth. Then he asks if the man will still come after him. The delinquent says no, but he gets beaten anyway. Everyone looks scared. The delinquent promises that he will never appear in front of him again. The protagonist orders the minions to get out of here. The men obey, but Chan remembers that his colleagues were wet. One of the minions hands over the jacket. Then he leaves. Unsel wipes himself. The protagonist asks who these people are. Hojun says that they are from the Student Gang Alliance. Chan is surprised because he remembers that Hojun was also from this gang. The guy replies that he has been beaten since the bandits who supported him disappeared. The protagonist says that in this case it was only Hojun and Unsil did not meet these people. Now he understood why the girl was wearing so much makeup at school. Chan says that they should refuse any meeting with the delinquents. Unsil thanks her for the help and he tells her to go take a shower. The girl wanted to talk to him, but she knows it will be in vain. Chan got into a car and put the address of his house. He took advantage of the moment to talk to Daeru. The protagonist changed the way he spoke because he knew that, at that time, Daeru's wife was nearby. The teacher answered the call and realized that Chan wanted to say something serious. He left his wife's side. Even so, the god of Blackfield continues to say strange things. Daeru assumes it's a code to say that his phone is tapped, so he makes an appointment to meet the protagonist the next day in the counseling room on the 4th floor. That was a code that Chan knew well. He asks the driver to make the U-turn. In a few minutes, he arrives at the park where Daeru was already waiting for him. The mercenary soon warns that it was difficult to make up an excuse for his wife, so Chan must be quick and say if he found out who is sending the messages. The protagonist reveals that he found Ranark earlier and found out that Charlene is alive. Daeru can't believe it. Chan replies that he was sure he delivered a fatal blow, but there was a phone call issued to France and the person called himself Desert Ice. He said that there is someone they absolutely need to eliminate in Korea. The protagonist knows that he is the target. Daeru soon understands that Charlene got the support of the Chinese, but sending messages is not something that the former head of the Expendables would do. The protagonist thinks the same. Besides, even if the man has survived after that attack, he still needs some more time to recover. It could be someone completely unconnected to him who is sending the threatening messages. Daeru asks what he should do now. Chan thinks the best option is to wait for France to deal with Charlene. If they don't succeed, then they will continue living life normally and waiting for France to ask for help. But it's good to be on guard if something happens suddenly. Daeru says that his only concern is that he will soon be leaving for a school excursion. The protagonist thinks that Radar is safer going on the trip and staying with the students. He remembers that he has not yet talked about the company he intends to open. The mercenary accuses him of being greedy. Chan explains that it was Renork's idea to found a company or take over an existing one. It's good to act more comfortably and easily in the future. Daeru says he has no idea how he does this kind of thing. It would be better to ask these questions to the women from before. Chan asks if he's talking about Michelle's friends. Daeru says yes, they were the ones who helped with the money transfer problems. The protagonist had forgotten about the girls. Later that night, Michelle got a call. She was happy and said she had the solution. The girl asked if the protagonist remembered Soyeon. She is a talented model who is not becoming popular because of her agency, probably because they are powerless and have no ambitions. Maybe the protagonist can run the agency. Chan replies that he doesn't have much knowledge in this sector. In this case, the girl doesn't have any more suggestions. She asks if he doesn't want to visit her. Chan simply hangs up the call and searches for Soyeon's name on the internet. The girl seems to have made many appearances in successful soap operas, in addition to having a lot of sponsorship. But her posts don't have many reactions. The protagonist assumes that this is not good for an actress. He then enters the agency called the Daya Family and realizes that the company is smaller than expected. They only have 3 actresses and no actors. The protagonist leaves Michelle's suggestion as a possibility in the future. For now, it is better to rest. After the events of that day, the following days passed without incident. Chan took his final exams. and held practical classes to get his driver's license. The teacher praised his performance. He drove very well for the first time. The protagonist easily passed the driver's license test. Daeru waits for him outside and congratulates him, then invites him to eat something. The protagonist realizes that the man bought a new car. No wonder, it is the most luxurious model. It seems that he is using the money very well. Daeru reveals that this car is Chan's. It is a gift for getting his driver's license. The protagonist shouts that the vehicle is too expensive. He can't accept it. Daeru insists and Chan has no other alternative, but he makes it clear that he won't need to drive this car until he finishes high school. Daeru asks if the captain doesn't want to drive. The protagonist replies that he just wants to eat. At the end of the day, Chan returned to the house thoughtful. Those days were being peaceful, but he couldn't get used to it. Suddenly, Chan has the feeling that he is being followed. For a moment, he thinks he is Charlene or a private bodyguard, but he gives up this idea because he realizes he feels that the person is too sloppy to be professional. The protagonist assumes that he is a member of the parking lot group, no matter who it is, because that person will be ambushed. At that moment, the main character enters a dark alley. The person follows behind and enters the alley. The next moment, Chan throws her away and prepares to throw a punch. Suddenly, the girl starts screaming. He was being followed by Kim. The protagonist angrily asks why she is doing this. The girl said she saw him and tried to make a surprise. Chan replies that she managed to do it. Kim asks how he found out if she didn't make any sound. The protagonist smiled and helped her up. The protagonist, the girl, is shy. She says that she is almost sure that she got all the questions of the test right. Even though the result has not yet come out, the protagonist thought that the girl came to him to brag, but soon realized that she wanted to remember the promise they made. Kim shyly said that she would be in first place in the classification. Suddenly, the protagonist pulls her close and kisses her forehead. He says that the kiss will be in that place for now. Kim smiles. Chan fears that the girl will be in even more danger. At the same time, in another place, a man said that the protagonist should get ready. Days later, the summer vacation arrives and the students of the sports group talk about the excursion. Daeru warns in advance that no matter what others do, the members of the sports club are forbidden to drink alcohol, to run away from visits and any other infraction. The teacher never tires of acting like the father of the young people. The students fear acting like this and being excluded again. Daeru says that if this happens, just talk to Chan. The protagonist was so distracted that he didn't notice the man talking to him. Chan wants Chan to go with them on the trip too, but he doesn't see why he should do it. In addition, the protagonist thinks that his group will be the only one happy with his presence. The girl tries to say that he is popular throughout the school, but Chan is not convinced. After lunch, the students clean the room and prepare to leave. Daeru comments that he is feeling happy with this new life. The protagonist could agree if Charlene was not alive. The mercenary hands over the car key. He knows that Chan will receive the driver's license in a few hours, so he can take the car home. Chan makes it clear that he does not intend to drive before graduating. Daeru simply ignores it because there may be a situation where he needs to drive, even if he doesn't want to. The protagonist finally accepts. He also wishes his friend a good riddance. Daeru confesses that he has a bad feeling. The next day, Chan wakes up at 9:30 a.m. and complains that it's late. He checks the text messages. The first one is from Daeru, and he said he was going on the excursion. The second one is from Sha. The girl asked him again to travel with the sports group. She assures him that everyone will be happy in his presence. The protagonist just replies that he will think about it. Now that Daeru will be away for 4 days and Michelle is solving the process of her new company, Chan doesn't know what he will do in his free time. He changes clothes and decides to exercise. But before he leaves, Suk offers a medicinal herbal tea that she prepared. The protagonist babies everything in seconds. A smile appears on the woman's face and she is delighted with her son. Chan is not used to family affection, so he simply turns his back and leaves. The protagonist receives a call on his way to school. On the other end of the line, Kim asks where he is. Chan replies that he was going to use the sports room to exercise since there are no students there. The scene changes to a while later. The protagonist used all the equipment in the room and felt stronger than before. He stops for a while to drink water. At that moment, Kim enters the room. Chan thinks it's a coincidence and asks if she also wants to exercise. The girl says no, she came because she got bored at home. The protagonist goes back to using the equipment, while Kim says that she will soon have 2 days off from prep school, so she will travel with her family for 1 day. The next day is free for her to do whatever she wants, so Kim thought they could do something together.